What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, and Dalton Wasserman here with you guys to recap every single game that we saw on the Sunday and Thursday slate for Week 12 in the NFL. We will release the PFF grades, give you the top 5 grades for every team and every matchup as we go through these bad boys, and you guys can follow along yourself if you want to. In fact, we're running a sale right now at PFF.com. You can get 35% off a PFF Plus subscription with the promo code SCORE35. So you guys can follow along on this show and every other show that we do here on this network. And, you know, every day in between, honestly. It's more than just the shows and the premium stats. You can get the fantasy football tools, the mock draft tools, the free agency tools. It is something for football fans all year round. So you guys can check that out. Score35 is how you get 35% off there for the Thanksgiving holidays. Dalton, how we doing today, my friend?
Fantastic. We had a fun day Saturday. Went to Columbus for Ohio State, Indiana. Maybe not the close game some thought it would be, but I mean, who knows? It was a chaotic Saturday in college football, chaotic Sunday in the NFL. I mean, just a whole weekend of chaos, as it seems we're getting every weekend.
We're here to talk about the NFL, but it is a football show, and I do have to say that you and Max do a fantastic job covering all of college football year round. I don't envy you right now because Saturday was very much okay, we'll see what happens with these results. Hopefully the playoff, solidifies itself. It did the opposite.
Yep.
Like, what were there, 5 or 6 teams that were within the top 12 that all lost on Saturday?
Seven of the top 20. Yep.
Yeah,
it's just thrown, and it was all of the right ones to just throw it all into chaos. I have no idea what's coming from
We
here.
thought last year, obviously with the whole Florida State being left out, with them being undefeated, we were like, okay, well, we'll never have to have these conversations again because we're going to a 12-team playoff the next year. Well, it's not undefeateds that we're keeping out, but it's plenty of teams that I feel like are going to get left out when we get to the end of college football.
It is going to be one big jumbled mess, and I think the thing people always forget, just like maybe in the NFL, we had a couple this week, the upsets always happen. It's not 100% locked in ever that the favorites are going to win just because they're favored or just because the line says so, and we saw some of that yesterday too.
I should have taken the hint when college football went off the rails on Saturday that's what was going to happen on Sunday, that the games were not going to go as predicted. And so let's jump into one of those right now. Let's jump into the Sunday night football game. Let's do that one first. Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. The Eagles end up winning this game 37-20. Man, the Eagles are absolutely rolling right now. We're going to dig into sort of their strategy and how it is working for them. But first, let's get to the top 5 graded Philadelphia Eagle players in this game. At the top of the list, we have edge rusher Brandon Graham with a 91.1 grade. Wide receiver A.J. Brown, right behind him with an 89.8. Offensive tackle Jordan Mailata with an 89.5. Running back Saquon Barkley an 87.9. And then linebacker Nakobe Dean an 83.8. Boy, to have 5 players graded above 83 in this one, that just shows you how good the Eagles are playing right now. Jalen Hurts in this game, a 66.6. Doesn't have to do a lot right now, and so I think that's why you see the grades a little bit lower. But again, we'll dig into Jalen Hurts as well as some of the rest of these players. On the Los Angeles Rams side of things, guard Kevin Dotson with an 88.8, wide receiver Puka Nacua an 83.9, defensive tackle Braden Fisk a 78.4, offensive tackle Eric Jackson with a 72.0, and then safety Cam Curl rounded it out at number 5 with a 69.3. Quarterback Matthew Stafford in this one, a 72.4 PFF grade. Dalton, I will start as we always do with the stat that told the story here in the Philadelphia Eagles with a 17-point win on the road. Tell me, what was the stat that told the story?
I don't even think it's a stat that tells the story. I think it's just the story, and the story is Saquon Barkley.
Story of the season, honestly.
It could be at the end of it, especially at 302 total yards, 2 touchdowns, 87.9 overall grade. I think the big thing for me is more so than the last couple of years when the Eagles were using a dominant offensive line to kind of uplift the production of average or just maybe above average running backs. Now you have an elite running back behind an elite offensive line, 29 explosive runs this year, leads the league. Last year, the whole regular season, Eagles running backs had 34.
Yeah.
He might pass this number next week. So you look at just the explosive element that he has, and then the amount that they're relying on him, okay? So the NFL right now, teams run the ball about 39-40% of the time on average. Their first 4 games, when the Eagles were 2-2, they were right around that. Since their bye week in week 5, they're running the ball 56.5% of the time. It's Saquon Barkley, and it's everything else working off it. It's play action then. A.J. Brown, obviously Devontae Smith didn't play last night, but when he's healthy, Dallas Goedert can get going. But they're riding just like they did 2 years ago. Offensive line, elite running game, elite defense. This is, I believe it's still the highest graded defense in football right now. Ever since Cooper DeJean especially went to the starting lineup in the slot, that was their biggest weakness. Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, who you saw in that top 5 right there. Everything's rolling for the Eagles right now, but it starts with Barkley as the engine of the whole thing. They are playing better complementary football than almost everybody probably except Detroit right now, and it's the formula that worked that got them to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and it's working right now.
Yeah, 2 things that I want to say. The first one is, everybody's immediate reaction, because this is just a Twitter thing, and I understand. When Saquon Barkley has a day or a night like the one that he had last night, everybody likes to go LOL Giants, right? Everybody likes to go to what happened with the Giants, how they kind of fumbled that, let Saquon Barkley out. I mean, you draft him, number 2 overall when you do, so you spend high draft capital on him. He has an incredible rookie year, really couldn't duplicate that whether he was healthy or not. You let him out of the building, and it felt like, okay, they want to bring him back, but not really exactly at the right price. He goes to a rival in the Philadelphia Eagles, and he is their entire offense and probably the reason why the Eagles are going to end up winning the NFC East again. And I think that when you look at this situation, the Giants were in a different spot, right? You cannot compare exactly what Saquon Barkley is doing right now to where the Giants were. The Giants are not in a place to pay a running back that much money. They're just not. Even one that is as game-changing and offensive-changing as Saquon Barkley is. The rest of the team is not there yet for the New York Giants. And so it made sense why they were a little bit hesitant, not just to allow Saquon to sort of name his price. Now, you could say to yourself, hey, did they go about it exactly the way that they should have? Maybe not. And I think that part of the criticism can be fair with Saquon Barkley. But to just simply say, oh, it was the same situation, the Giants let him out and the Eagles signed him, very different. The Eagles, sort of like what you mentioned, some areas of their team that was missing from last year that Saquon is just taking them to another level. I mean, when you look at the Eagles football team and some of their quote-unquote team needs going into the season, get more explosive out of the backfield, more consistent in their run game, because it was way too much was on Jalen Hurts' plate last year, and you saw the turnover-worthy plays, bump up because of it, and Jalen's so much better when he's a point guard. You could be a point guard with Saquon Barkley. So it was improve the run game, improve the linebacker level, and get better certainly in the secondary, on the outside with Darius Slay, and then in the slot. They did all 3 of those at an extremely high football level, and that's what you see a really good football team playing the way that they are. So I just wanted to say, I don't think it's a one-to-one situation where you could just totally dunk on the Giants every single time that Saquon Barkley does something well. Now, does it end up maybe costing Joe Shane and Brian Dable their jobs? Maybe, but it's not like it was the worst organizational decisional failure in the world. 2, I want to say this because boss man Chris Collinsworth said last night on the broadcast that the Eagles' offense right now, it feels like layups and 3-pointers. It feels like the Golden State Warriors, right? It's a layup every time that you give it to Saquon Barkley because it's a guaranteed 2, and it could be something that's just like, all right, we know we're going to have success every time we hand the ball off to this guy. And then it's the shot plays. And to me, how A.J. Brown played versus the Rams cornerbacks is the stat that told the story for me, because not only did they get the layups, why do teams really want to run the football? Because it's easy, right? There's no risk involved. You hike the ball, you turn around, you hand it to the guy, he puts it in the chest, normally, handles the football well, runs forward. That's it. It's very simple. When you throw the football, you physically have to put the football in the air, suspend the ball in the air where no team has it, and it's totally up for grabs. You don't have to do that when you run the football. So that's the layup. A.J. Brown's the 3-pointer. And when you have 3-pointers like with A.J. Brown, who had in this game 7 targets, 6 catches, over 100 yards again, and we mentioned a near elite wide receiver grade, 4 plays of 15 or more yards. Now you have a complementary offense. Now you have something like the Golden State Warriors where they're totally unstoppable on offense because you cannot defend both of these things. So I thought it was a great analogy that they brought up. The Eagles offense, it's 3-pointers and it's layups. And to me, that was the stat that told the story of an offense that's really humming.
And Hurts knows when to check. I think, some of the biggest decisions made by a defensive coordinator as always is how many do we put in the box, and then how do we go about that coverage behind it? And the problem is if you try to put 8 in the box and go man-to-man on the outside against Brown and Smith and even inside with Goddard where he always gets mismatches, you're going to lose that battle too. I think the Eagles, they're so tough to run man coverage against, so now you have to play zone coverage because of the receivers and Hurts' feet. If you play man coverage against Hurts, you're running the danger of him running the football, and then you have to marry the coverage with the front, and then you have to find a way to get through the best offensive line in football right now. There's so many problems. And the answer to stopping the Eagles right now really is you just have to be better than them because they have so many options, and schematically there's always a problem on the field, whether you want to lean towards coverage or into the run game.
You know, just looking at large, sort of before we get into our most impressive and most disappointing, everyone's just saying, hey, Lions are getting the 1 seed. Lions are going to get the 1 seed. Lions are going to get the 1 seed. Eagles are 9-2. Eagles are 9-2 right there, and we'll get to the Vikings. We'll obviously talk about the Vikings, who are also 9-2, right on the heels of the Detroit Lions, who are 10-1. But it's this situation where I think, again, everybody just kind of talks about the Lions as representing the NFC in the Super Bowl, and not to take anything away from them. Obviously, they're a monster of a team, but Eagles are right there, and they're keeping pace with them to potentially get the 1 seed in the NFC. My most impressive in this game, I'm going to go with Brandon Graham. And I'm going to go with Brandon Graham because he was the highest graded player in this game for the Philadelphia Eagles. 91.6 defensive grade, 87.0 run defense grade, 79.8 pass rush grade. But also as sort of a nod to respect for not just the season, but the career that Brandon Graham is having, because unfortunately it was announced that he tore his tricep last night and he's going to be done for the season. He was emotional afterwards. There were pictures and videos of him in the locker room getting really emotional. Nick Sirianni didn't want to talk about it. They asked Nick Sirianni about Brandon Graham, and Nick's like, I'm not ready to talk about it. Like, hell of a player, one of my favorite players that I've ever had the opportunity to coach, and I'm not ready to talk about Brandon Graham being done, because this was going to be the last year for Brandon Graham. And so for it to go out like this, and even he said afterwards, I can't remember the exact quote, I might be paraphrasing a little bit here, but he was like, hey, if this is it for me, I gave the game everything I had. And it's just, it was a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful statement when you could say that with your whole chest and your whole heart, and just know that it's true. It's a phenomenal player, one that has a Hall of Fame type of case to him. I don't know if he's going to get in the Hall of Fame, but he's a player who was with the same organization for 15 years, with his 14th, 15th year. I think that's special in and of itself, to have the longevity, to stay with a team and an organization that long. I mean, it's just so cool, not to mention the success that he has had as a player. So my most impressive, I'm giving it to Brandon Graham, not only because he deserved it for this game, but he deserves the nod for the year and the career that he has had, if this is in fact where he hangs it up. So shout out to Brandon Graham.
For sure, one of the best players of the last decade, and I think one of the more underappreciated players of the last decade. Was he the last remaining piece from that Super Bowl victory? I think he might be the last guy on the team that still remains, because that was 2017, wasn't it?
Lane would have been on the team.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Lane Johnson.
Lane Johnson would have been on the team.
Yep.
Would Mailata have been on the team?
No, I don't think so. If he was, he might have been a rookie and a backup, but I don't think, because he's only 27 right now. Speaking of,
he is only 27. Yeah, you're right.
While you're looking that up,
drafted in 2018. So no.
Okay, speaking of my most impressive, actually, how about that left tackle Jordan Mailata?
Yeah.
And you know what? When Mailata has been on the field healthy, the Eagles have had the best offensive line in football, and in this game he was great again. 89.5 overall, only allowed one pressure. Jared Verse got him once. It happens. Jared Verse is a freak. 92.5 run blocking grade. If you want a reason, at least some reason other than his own talent, that Saquon Barkley's doing all this, Jordan Mailata and this offensive line, 11 positively graded run blocks last night. And look, the Rams have a really good young defensive line, but they got a welcome to the NFL moment facing Mailata and this crew. And since he's been back, it's just hit another level. These five guys up front, Mailata, Dickerson, Juergens, Becton, Johnson, it doesn't get any better than that. And again, since he's gotten healthy, he missed a few weeks with injury. They were struggling at left tackle with backups for a bit. He's one of the elite players in football at any position. He's just been incredible this year, and he's going to continue to be that. Like you just mentioned, he's only 27, and it seems like he's only getting better.
Yeah, you're most disappointing in this game.
Just, again, the Rams they have so many young kids on the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah.
For a lot of first, second-year players, this was welcome to the NFL, because this
Definitely.
was elite-level trench play from the Eagles. And look, they battled. I won't tell you they didn't battle. Got Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk. Bo Limmer had a tough night on the inside, and certainly not a guy who was expecting to start most of the games at center. We've talked about this before, but this was an experienced, dominant front on both sides of the ball for the Eagles, beating a talented young front on both sides for the Rams. They're going to get better. They're going to learn from a game like this, but it was certainly a dominant effort in the trenches both ways.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jared Verse, I mean, this is my most disappointing as well, because I thought it was a fantastic test for these young defensive linemen who are playing this season very, very well. And it's been, I think, over the last month, if I remember the timeline correctly, the third highest defensive line graded in the NFL. And so they were coming in to face Philadelphia. It was at home. It was a great test. It was a great opportunity for them to be playing some of their best ball, going up against one of the best in the NFL in the Philadelphia Eagles. And it was kind of tough for them. 50.1 overall grade for Byron Byron Young, 40.8 overall grade from Jared Verse, 36.0 for Tyler Davis, 56.1 for Bobby Brown III. Kobe Turner had a 67.2. Michael Hoyt has 69.9, and Braden Fisk had a 78.4. So Fisk, get 1 or 2 sacks on this game. Had 3 solo stops, so he was the top guy, but really outside of Fisk, nobody was able to be a big difference maker for them. But it'll be a learning game for them, which I'm excited to see how they respond next week moving forward. Let's move on to the Lions and the Colts. Lions end up winning this game 24-6, sort of business as usual for the Lions, but closer than the scoreboard would indicate, I think. And we'll dig into that a little bit, certainly on Indianapolis' side of things. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for the Detroit Lions to start things out. Edge rusher Zadarius Smith. Boy, does this pay off pretty quickly. An 88.4 overall grade for the new Detroit Lion. Offensive tackle Taylor Decker with an 81.3. Wide receiver Tim Patrick with an 80.7. Guard Kevin Zeitler a 75.4. Then running back Jahmyr Gibbs with a 75.2 to round things out. Jared Goff in this one earning a 63.5 overall grade. And then on Indianapolis' side of things, wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr., top graded player with an 88.6. Edge rusher Laiatu Latu with an 86.7. Defensive tackle Grover Stewart with an 82.9. Wide receiver Josh Downs a 78.9. Offensive tackle Mac on Cavs with 72.9. And then Anthony Richardson with a 76.6 overall grade. Not too bad over the last 2 games with Anthony Richardson, so certainly the floor seems to be a little bit higher over the last 2 weeks, but albeit it was a loss this week. Your stat that told the story, what do you got?
So it's kind of weird because usually we have something flashy with the Lions and they're scoring 50 points. They're doing something crazy we've never seen before, right? And I think there's some games where obviously they're that dominant, and this was a dominant game, 24-6, but I think this was a game where they dominated the little things. And my stat is the Lions only went 3 and out once. And what you get with this offense is, okay, they didn't score 45, 50 points in this game, but almost every single drive, they still do something positive. When you talk about influencing field position, when you talk about extending drives on third downs, when you talk about just the little things, not turning the ball over, right? The Colts did not have a drive start outside their own 30-yard line. And the only times they got to 30 were touchbacks after scores from the Lions, right? So you're talking about even little things like, okay, we got 1 or 2 first downs on this drive, and we got to somewhere around midfield, and Jack Fox on this day, he had 4 punts inside the 20. Field position and just kind of slowly grinding things down and making positive plays, that's where the Lions lived in this game. They first, I guess any given week, they can decide, we feel like throwing for 400 yards, or they can just go, we're going to grind it out today and lean on the offensive line and Jahmyr Gibbs and just kind of get first downs and control the clock. Because I don't know if it's just they can do it because they feel like it or what. Because, it almost reminded me a little bit of remember when the Packers played the Colts and beat the Colts with Malik Willis?
Yes.
Kind of like that. Let's just control the clock and run right at them, be more physical, and get out of here. I think the Lions, the fact that they have that choice, that they almost have more than one identity that they can go with, it's an incredible asset because you watch them and you go, throughout this game, you go, they didn't do anything freaky, they didn't do anything special. They just walked on the field and kind of did what they did. It felt very casual, didn't it? But I think the fact that it's so special at the NFL level when you can walk into a game like this and just do all of the little things right. And again, even if you didn't score points on said drive, all right, we pinned them back and we'll make a stop because we don't think Anthony Richardson can go 85 yards on us if he starts at his own 15 or his own 10 or whatever, and you're going to make him work for it, right? And all we got to do from that point is just prevent 80-yard touchdowns because that's really what Richardson wants at heart, right? And I don't think – and this is nothing – I'm not even going to go on any Anthony Richardson thing. There's nothing he could have done in this game. Honestly, couple of drives, but you don't get many opportunities – when the Lions are controlling a game like the way they are.
Well, look, I said that this game was closer than the scoreboard would indicate, and I meant it. I'll wrap sort of all my points. The stat that told the story, my most disappointing and my most impressive. My most impressive is that it was business as usual for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they could walk out of they can pop out of bed and it's basically 24 points at a minimum that they're going to score. They're just too efficient of an offense. So if you're not scoring high to low 30s in a football game, you're not going to beat the Lions. There's basically not a lot of examples over the last 2 years, really, where you could say that was the case. I think the Bucs. What did the Bucs beat the Lions by earlier this year? What was the final score in that game?
I know it went right down to the wire.
It was 16-20, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was 16-20 in that game. So that's got to be one of the only games where somebody beat the Detroit Lions by scoring less than 25 points. And so this was just another testament to there's nothing flashy from Detroit. They scored 24 points. They ended up winning the football game. Now, there are some stats that I want to get to. One, Colts penalties. To me, that was the stat that told the story of the whole game. Not only did they have 10 penalties for 75 yards of penalty yardage, these penalties, I got this stat from Jim Aiello, who is the senior editor for the NFL at The Athletic. Of those penalties, gains of 21 yards, 20 yards, 19, 7, and 30 were all negated by penalties. So that's not even including the penalty yardage that you then get assessed of the 75 yards of penalty yards that were assessed against you. You took away those plays because of the penalties that you had. So these are major gains in the game. 20, 21, 19, 30. Those are difference-making types of plays. Difference-making plays for drives and scoring drives and the scoreboard and all that. So to not only have as many penalties as they did, as much penalty yardage as they did, the unrealized yards and completions that they had because of those penalties also just compounds them only scoring 6 points in this game, because it really didn't look that bad on their side of things. You then get to the red zone. My most disappointing is kind of the Colts in the red zone. Lions, if you don't score in the red zone, you're not going to beat the Detroit Lions. Plain and simple.
Threes don't win.
When it comes to successful red zone drives. So successful means you scored a touchdown. It doesn't mean that there were no points yielded. It means, did you score a touchdown when you got in the red zone? Lions, 3 for 4. Again, business as usual. It's what the Detroit Lions do. Colts, over 2.
Can't have it.
2 field goals instead of 2 touchdowns. So you combine the fact that they could not capitalize in the red zone, and you have all of the everything that went into the 10 penalties that they had. That's the reason why this game's so lopsided. I don't know if they win this football game, but shoot, it felt a lot more like a 21-24 football game than a 24-6 football game. So that was, to me, just the stat that told the story of how we got here.
And the Colts, for the most part, didn't grade that poorly on offense.
No.
So there is kind of a disconnect there of like, well, they only scored 6 points, but they played well. They just made just enough mistakes against a team that arguably, look, you have almost no room for error when you're playing this Lions team. Because first of all, when they get momentum, it can be an avalanche. We've seen that several times this year. And second, again, when you have a team that does all these little things right, they control field position, they stay on the field on third down, they don't beat themselves, right? You have to go out there and just outplay them. And for a team like the Colts, that means you have to play an absolutely perfect game.
Yep. Richardson led the team in rushing, 61 rushing yards, had 3 big-time throws in this one, had 2 turnover-worthy plays as well, but had the 3 big-time throws, which is high variance, but he's doing a lot of sort of what you would want him to do to win the game. So I think that's why you look at his score relatively high in this game, but albeit it wasn't enough, and the Detroit Lions just got the win. By the way, in the chat, somebody said that Jake Elliott also still on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, he was on that team too. He was real young on that team.
Yeah, wow. So we got Brandon Graham, we got Lane Johnson, and we got Jake Elliott.
Good call. Okay. Yeah. You forget kickers just last forever, right?
You can't forget kickers.
There's some teams in the last couple weeks I would like to. Real quick, most disappointing.
Go ahead.
You mentioned the run game. I'm not sure what's up with Jonathan Taylor, but another game, 11 carries and 35 yards, and for the season, he's only got a 58.6 rushing grade and forced 19 missed tackles. It just doesn't seem like. And you had mentioned when Richardson got back that he could be more efficient with the option game and Richardson back on the field, but Taylor just doesn't. Especially lately, just doesn't look the same. And I know the offensive line is a problem too. They're starting 3 rookies on the offensive line right now. That's a huge issue. But Taylor's not breaking tackles, not getting yards after contact. So it only gets harder if the Colts can't run the football. And then most impressive, I got to go with the trade acquisition. Za'Darius Smith. That's everything they wanted from him, right? I mean, 5 pressures, 2 more that were negated via penalty. Should have had 7. 70 run defense grade, 0 negative grades in run defense, 81.6 pass rush grade.
Yep.
Balanced, excellent football player. I need an update on the number, but when they traded for him, he had the 12th best pass rush win rate in the league. He's everything they could want in a replacement. Maybe not everything as a replacement for Aiden Hutchinson, but this is the type of pass rusher that they needed desperately because they saw in those few weeks without Hutchinson or Smith where it was like, oh, we have nothing off the edge. The interior rush is elite. I'm sorry, Lee McNeil's an elite player.
You don't have to apologize. You start that by saying, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize to me.
Throwing this out there, I just
McNeil.
think people forget this interior rush for the Lions is a serious problem. They just needed something off the edge to complement it, and that's what Za'Darius has given them. I mean, if he continues to do that, then we keep the Lions at the front of the Super Bowl conversation because that was the one big concern is the pass rush without Hutchinson. But this was a day where you can feel like, okay, Za'Darius, this is this is the real deal. We can do this with him, and maybe there's still that outside chance you get Hutch back for the Super Bowl and see where it goes from there. But got to get there first, and to get there, they're going to need Smith to continue to be really good.
It just feels like anybody who goes to the Detroit Lions, they play to the best of their ability. Coaching matters, man. Not that Za'Darius was not playing well before, but we've seen this before where teams will trade for a player, and it's not always a guarantee that they're going to play the same or better.
You know what I love
look at Matthew Judon with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
They trade for Matthew Judon, and okay, like Judon, it's not like he was this totally dominant pass rusher, but it's not like he's that much better in Atlanta. And in fact, in ways, he's been a less efficient pass rusher during his time in Atlanta. So just because you traded for somebody and you brought them in doesn't even mean that you're getting the same player that you watched before you traded for them. So for Za'Darius Smith to not only be the same player that he is, but playing better amongst this group, to me, it's just coaching, culture, the guys around you really matters, and nobody's better than that.
And you
right
mentioned
now.
the coaching. One thing I love, because they don't do this on the Browns. They line him up in his spot, and that's it. If you look at the Lions right now, especially, I don't know if it started this week or it's just more rampant this week, or the first time I noticed it, they're moving him around. Like on third down, he could be standing in the A gap, he could be over the tackle, he could be wide nine. They're moving him all over the place. As just, a guy just trying to create matchups with maybe another, just a good matchup with the other team's offensive line, who's the weak spot and all that. And it's a lot of fun to watch right now. Like the next time when you watch the Lions next week, every third down, find out where Za'Darius Smith is, because it's going to be a different spot every time. There's times where you can't find him and you're constantly trying to adjust. And you have the two big monsters in McNeil and Reeder in the middle. They're not only are they using his talent, obviously, because he's a talented player, but they're using him in different schemes now, really in a similar way that they would use Hutchinson, and they're moving him around and you can't find him, and they're messing with teams' protections left and right.
Vikings-Bears, next game that I want to hit on. Tight divisional matchup, 30-27 the final score. Minnesota comes away with the win, improved to 9-2 on the season. Let's look at the top 5 graded Minnesota Vikings here in this game. Wide receiver Jordan Addison at the very top of the list. We'll dig into him a little bit more in his performance and how great it was. 87.4 in this game. Edge rusher Jonathan Grenard with an 87.2. Tight end TJ Hawkinson, very clearly a mainstay once again in that offense, coming off of that ACL injury. An 80.7 overall grade. Offensive tackle Brian O'Neill with a 77.7. Cornerback Stephon Gilmore with a 75.0, and then Sam Darnold in this game an 84.7. On the other side of things, Kyler Gordon at 90.9 overall grade. Defensive tackle Jervin Dexter with an 87.9. Linebacker Jack Sanborn an 86.0. Edge rusher DeMarcus Walker with a 79.5, and then guard Tevin Jenkins a 77.4. Caleb Williams in this game 74.8. Sure, we'll dig into Caleb Williams a little bit more. Your stat that told the story though, Dalton.
Same as last week. Too many explosive plays from the Bears secondary allowed. And Kyler Gordon's got the good grade there. He had a good day, 2 forced incompletions, but the rest of their coverage unit, they're a mess right now on the back end. And since week 8, they have the lowest coverage grade in football as a team. 54.9 coverage grade as a team in this game. Every other player in their secondary, aside from Gordon, had a coverage grade below 60. And on our scale, 60 is kind of the cutoff where you go, that's neutral, and anything above it's some sort of positive. Anything below it starts getting negative. 6 explosive completions in this game for Minnesota accounted for 217 yards. Too many home run balls given up by this Bears defense. Yeah. And I thought Kevin O'Connell, I was messing around right before the show. Off screen there, I was drawing up some things Kevin O'Connell was doing and just finding ways to isolate defenders that he wanted isolated on certain guys, right? A linebacker on a TJ Hawkinson or Jordan Addison working through his zone coverage and things like that. It was the perfect combination of O'Connell with a great game plan. And, of course, the Vikings have all these weapons to work with, so that makes it easier, especially when you have Justin Jefferson. But he wasn't even the biggest threat in this game because O'Connell knew, all right, they're going to lock in on Jefferson. Let's use him as a decoy, because I think there is an art to that. When certain coaches do that, I do have this guy. Andy Reid's really good at doing it with Travis Kelce, where I go, let me use the magnet that Kelce is. Let me use the magnet that Jefferson is. And let's get some big days out of some other guys like Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, and then they can run the football too. But right now, the Bears secondary, earlier in the year, I would argue was the best part of their whole team. Right now, they're not getting it done, and they're giving up too many explosive plays, and that's what happened again, especially early in this game. And then it showed up again in overtime when Hawkinson had the big catch and then the game-winning field goal for the Vikings. Yada, yada, yada. The Bears are struggling in coverage.
Yeah, when you look at sort of the threat percentages, which is I've said on the show many times, it's a stat basically quantifying wide receiver usage, how much are you getting targeted per the routes that you are running. Justin Jefferson in this game, third on the team. Both Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson were higher. They were in the 20s, and Justin Jefferson with an 18.6 threat percentage in this one. So when you look at just the regular stats, Jefferson, 5 targets, 2 catches, 27 yards. And then you look at Addison and TJ Hawkinson, both of them with 9 targets, both of them with over 100 yards receiving. And I thought that when you sort of set this up correctly, it was a really good explanation of they used Jefferson sort of as that decoy. And my most impressive in this game was Jordan Addison, 86.6 receiving grade, 9 targets, 8 catches, 162 receiving yards, 61 yards after catch, and then that 25% threat percentage. And so he was fantastic. But the stat that told the story, I think it goes into how the Bears coverage group is struggling a little bit more. And this is sort of a theme, because I'm going to say this a lot for a couple of teams. It was not a very disciplined week for a lot of NFL teams. And I'm going to sound like a broken record by the time we get to the end of the show, but the penalties, I think, killed a lot of football teams. The Bears were one of them. 7 penalties for 80 yards in this game. Jalen Johnson himself, who had not had a defensive pass interference penalty against him all year long, has 2 in this game. One that puts the Vikings on the, what was it, like 7-yard line, like right within the 10, whatever it was. And then there was another one that was an in-breaking route that he was getting a little bit too grabby on, right? And so whenever that's the case, it's just, it's brutal. Defensive pass interference calls are absolutely brutal, especially from your star corner. And I do want to say this. I don't think we give coverage the grace it deserves, because the nature of playing coverage, whether it's corner or safeties or as a group overall, is very up and down. It is just a very high variance part of the game of football. Like, for example, the Jets kind of stink this year in coverage. I don't all of a sudden think that DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner are bad. Like, I don't think these are bad football players. It just kind of, it's tough. A lot of these plays that you make as a corner, like they're bang plays, like plays in the secondary, a lot of it has to do with chemistry and playing really well and catching the offense in a way where they are not expecting you to deploy a certain coverage shell the way that you are, having that sort of confidence within the other guys that are next to you. Like, coverage is just very up and down. It doesn't all of a sudden mean that the Bears coverage players are terrible.
It can be a lack of execution,
but they are struggling.
Because people think about, okay, offense is the one where you have to execute and you have to have this high execution rate.
Yes.
You have to execute on defense too. And if you don't, if you have a pass-off done wrong or somebody rotates the wrong way. And I would say
it's harder to execute on defense because
you're reacting.
You are reacting, and truly, like, you are a caterpillar. Like, it is legs in the caterpillar. And if one of the legs doesn't work, you don't move. And on offense, shoot, I mean, we see this with the Cincinnati Bengals. The offensive line could be bad. The run game couldn't be great. Still got Jamar. Doesn't matter. We can move the ball down the field. It doesn't really work like that on the defensive side of the ball. So I think it's really frustrating, and I'm saying this to sort of talk to Bears fans about it. I think there's a lot of frustration with the secondary because this was supposed to be a strength of the team, because it certainly was a strength of the team last year. But this is just to NFL fans in general. Just because your coverage group was good last year, even if you have good players, there's no guarantee that they're going to be good throughout a full season the next year. So that's just something to think about. The defensive pass interference penalties were big in this one. And then my most disappointing in this one is just, it's another wasted good Caleb day. And it wasn't a perfect Caleb day? No. But again, the bar is not perfect, people. We're just looking for good. And Caleb Williams played well. 78.8 passing grade, 32 for 47, 340 yards passing, had 2 passing touchdowns. He had 5 big-time throws in this game, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Caleb did what he needed to do to get this team at least in striking distance to get the win. And it was not a complimentary football game enough from the Chicago Bears. And I think that too many of those stacking up on top of each other is why you might be hearing those voices for Matt Eberflus to be out going into next year rise a little bit and get a little bit louder. But the more Caleb Williams plays well and the Bears still can't win, that unfortunately shines the spotlight even brighter on the coaches that are there to be able to get it done with the rest of the roster. So not a perfect day from Caleb, but another really good day that unfortunately was another loss for them.
I mean, we got to remember they were down 10 late, and he went down and scored, and then they got the onside kick, and then he made a huge throw to DJ Moore. I mean, he did actually everything he possibly could have to win this game. The problem, it is the rest of them. It's the defense. It's the special teams, another blocked field goal early in the game, just like last week. And then, again, I want to focus this run game because I think it is the biggest problem right now. They've had 6 games this year where they didn't rush for at least 80 yards. They're 0-6 in those games. That's just where it's at. When they have balance, and they only ran 6 play-action plays this entire game, and 2 of them were screens, not a single explosive run from a running back. We have seen this over and over. You can feel it even without the numbers. When DeAndre Swift gets going, the whole Bears offense gets going, right? Because they have balance and they get to play action. They can roll Caleb out. They can not ask Caleb to carry them. Now, did he carry them for the most part in this game? Sure. And the other thing I wasn't a big fan of, got the ball first in overtime, 3 plays, 3 passes. Didn't even bother trying to run the ball at that point. You can't ask him to do this because even at times when he does it, you still lost the ball game. You mentioned it. It is a wasted effort. So I just think this Bears run game, I think we're going to get serious focus as we get towards draft season here about their offensive line and really needing to just get better up front. So, A, we can run between the tackles instead of constantly having to run outside because it's the only place they're effective. And B, I mean, we know the pass protection too. The great teams in the NFL have great offensive lines. This is not a question. The Chiefs, obviously, there's issues at tackle, but it's the best interior in football. The Lions are monsters up front. The Eagles, these are the teams. Even the Bills unit's been really good this year. These are the teams with great offensive lines that are at the top of the league, and the Bears need to find that before they're going to get there. Most impressive, another weapon. You had Addison. I'll take Hawkinson. 7 catches for 114 yards, and I just think the biggest thing here was this was his 4th game he played. This was the first one where he looked 100%. He looked explosive. He could win down the field. 3 explosive catches in this game. He only had 2 in his first 3 games. This TJ Hawkinson looked different than the last 3 weeks. I think we have to remember, Vikings, I don't think they made any trades or anything at the trade deadline. False. They got Cam Robinson at left tackle, but which helps. They needed that. But Hawkinson's like another trade acquisition. When you get just like he was last year, year before, whichever year that was, they traded for him. You have that element now on top of Jefferson, Addison, Naylor, Jones, Chandler, Darnold. I mean, just everything that they have. It just have another tool like this they can go to on a day where they can use Jefferson as a decoy. It's almost not fair at that point with Kevin O'Connell calling plays.
Sounds like my fantasy team when I drafted TJ Hawkinson. Just waiting. That's it. Just waiting.
Sometimes you can wait it out. I did that last year. I did that last year with Kyler Murray.
And there you go. There you go. See, the strats. We got the fantasy strats for you here. That's why you guys tuned into PFF. Anything else with this one before we move on?
Nope, that's about it.
All right, let's do it. Cowboys Commanders. Next game we want to hit here. Dallas wins this game 34-26. I think a lot of people thought that this was going to be an easy win for the Washington Commanders, and Dallas goes in there and look at that. They win the football game. Top 5 graded players for the Dallas Cowboys in this one. Cornerback Jordan Lewis, an 84.0. Linebacker Eric Kendricks, a 78.0. Guard TJ Bass with a 75.8. Wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, a 74.6. Safety Donovan Wilson, a 73.3. Cooper Rush in this game, 60.4 overall grade. And then on Washington's side of things, wide receiver Diami Brown was the top graded player with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Sheldon Day, a 73.6. Wide receiver Noah Brown, 72.2. Edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong, a 71.9, and then linebacker Frankie Louvu with a 70.2. Jaden Daniels in this one, an 86.5. It's a really good grade for a quarterback in a loss. And so it looked different for the Commanders, though. It's a very different looking football game. Sadly told the story. Dalton, what do we got?
I'm going to go with the third phase here, special teams. I mean,
very coach of you.
Yeah, right? I mean, I always love just talking about it, too. Anytime I can bring it up here, even though all the talk is always about the 2 fun phases, this is actually the fun one, but not for the Commanders in this game. Look, Austin Seibert missed a field goal, missed 2 extra points. Obviously, the one at the end after Jaden McLaurin pulled the miracle, 86-yard touchdown that should have tied the game. I'm so used to saying it tied it because we take it for granted, but 33-yard extra points you can't take for granted. Kevontae Turpin with the ridiculous Madden spin move on the kick return for a touchdown. Even on the other side, you had some. I would call it a blunder. I'm not sure. I get it. The adrenaline's going and you're making a play, but not exactly sure what Wanye Thomas was doing, returning that onside kick all the way for a touchdown to give the Commanders the ball back again. Plus, you had Brandon Aubrey with a missed field goal and a blocked field goal. Special teams in this game was an absolute circus, and the entire game became an absolute circus because of it. And it seems to be a theme I think we're getting with some teams more as it rolls on. We've talked about the Bears with their field goals. Hell, I was even at a game Saturday, Ohio State, Indiana. The 2 biggest plays in that game were special teams plays, right? I mean, these are the plays that can turn things around. And for the Commanders, especially at the end of the game, this was their biggest problem. Is every time they came to punch back and they were right on the brink of taking the game over, something wrong will happen on special teams. So that can happen. It's kind of the dichotomy of an upset that can happen. If you blow the third phase, the team can take advantage.
I want to talk about the Cowboys' deep coverage because it wasn't perfect. It's not like I have a stat that's like totally like a slam dunk. Look at how they locked them down. But, you know, when you look at before that Hail Mary, before the Terry McLaurin Hail Mary, and I'm going to do this a couple of times because the Hail Mary sort of broke this game open into chaos. And I think that you sort of have to take that away and go with more of the, all right, what happened for the 3.5 quarters of this football game approach before you get into the craziness that was whatever it was the last 5-8 minutes of this game. Before the Hail Mary to McLaurin, Cowboys on deep coverage, 6 targets of 15 or more yards, only give up 2 receptions before that McLaurin bomb. Just a 7.9 average depth of target before the Washington Hail Mary, only 180 passing yards for Jaden Daniels before that McLaurin pass, which was the 3rd lowest total that week for a quarterback at that point in time. At that point in time in the game. So to me, I thought the Cowboys did a really good job of just playing cap coverage, basically saying we're not going to let Jaden do what he has done to other teams through the first 6 weeks of the season and what he did all of last year at LSU that won him a Heisman Trophy. We are going to essentially, it's what the Buffalo Bills are doing this year, right? I don't know exactly the coverages that they deployed. I don't know if it was a lot of cover 2, a lot of quarters like the Bills are doing, but whatever they were doing, it was limiting what Jaden Daniels was going to be able to do to push the ball deep down the field. And however they were defending him, it worked perfectly because he was not explosive at all until you get to the final 8 minutes of that football game. So to me, that's a huge stat that told the story because it allowed the Cowboys to stay in it. You know, they were allowed to think that, okay, we were right there, and they ended up winning the football game, which I don't think a lot of people gave them the ability to do in this one. So to me, I thought that how they played in that deep coverage, it was great for how they countered what Washington wants to do well. I think that we're going to start to, if we haven't already, have the Cliff Kingsbury conversations because Cliff always seems to, the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, Cliff always seems to like start hot, right? Even with his time with the Arizona Cardinals, you know, obviously the first 6 weeks of the season with Washington Commanders, it's like, oh my gosh, nearly 80 to 100% in the red zone, you know, 75% on third down. I mean, like, nobody can stop this offense. Nobody knows what's coming. Now we're in the second half of the season, and it's sort of the same script like it always has been with Cliff Kingsbury, is that once he is figured out in the middle of the year, he doesn't really have a counterpunch. It's like he goes into the season saying, okay, this is what I want to do this year. When defenses sort of adjust to that, he doesn't really have an adjustment back. And so these last, what do we got now? Like 6 games, 5-6 games.
Yep.
These last 5-6 games for the Commanders are going to be huge, specifically for Cliff Kingsbury, because if they continue to sort of sputter down the end and not make it into the playoffs, they're absolutely going to change offensive coordinators, even with as good of a beginning of the season that Jaden Daniels had.
I don't know that they would do that because I think we have to put into perspective where this team was last year. They were the 2nd worst team in football.
Yeah, but the whole regime's different, right?
It is, but the idea, they weren't supposed to be this good anyway. Making the playoffs would be an absolute party for them, right? They don't have, I think the big thing for me, and here's the coverage question. This is something I had a feeling, I was looking into it during the Steeler game and now this game. They don't have, you mentioned, what are the adjustments? They don't have guys who can separate. They don't have that much talent. They need in this offseason, whether it's T. Higgins or Chris Godwin or somebody at receiver in free agency, or they draft a Tet McMillan or Luther Burden, they need something else. Man-to-man coverage is where I'm going with this, okay?
Okay.
The Commanders have the 9th best receiving grade in the league against zone coverage. It's 28th against man. You're getting now the adjustment where teams are lining up. They are not afraid of Noah Brown. They're not afraid of De'Ami Brown. They're not afraid of Zach Ertz. They're not really afraid of Austin Eckler out of the backfield. He's good. He's still effective-ish, but he's not a blazer or anything like that. Terry McLaurin's the only guy you feel like can beat you man-to-man. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to do it every play, right? I think we're learning with the Commanders as the season wears on. There's a reason they were the 2nd worst team in football last year. They lacked talent. They don't have an elite receiver outside of McLaurin. They don't have an elite offensive line that's not playing well the last 5-6 weeks after they got off to a pretty hot start. The first, when they were off to that 7-2 they started? Offensive line was off to a good start. Now they're playing better. They're playing better defensive fronts with players like TJ Watt and Justin Madubuike and Micah Parsons. That makes it harder, right? And you do get the adjustments. And to beat man-to-man coverage when you have lesser guys, you do need the play calling to be better. There's man beaters that every coach draws up every week, but the Commanders aren't getting to them. Jaden Daniels in this game against man coverage, 2 for 8 with 10 yards. That's where it's at. They're lining up in first it was, okay, we're beating them up front because their offensive line's still not that good. Second is, we're just going to challenge these guys on the outside. Go ahead. If Noah Brown or De'Ami Brown or somebody else or Luke McCaffrey separates from us, sure, we'll take that gamble. Even the Steelers did it, and they don't have that great a secondary, but they said, we don't think you guys are that good either. That's, to me, where I go, okay, we are seeing around. My most disappointing is just the lack of help for Jaden Daniels. Because I go, he's got Terry McLaurin, and then we still need more to work on in this offseason, right? The offensive line. The running backs, 17 carries for 57 yards. Doesn't get it done.
Run game's tough. I mean, when this team can't run the football, and I think I'll go back to when they were having success at the beginning of the season. Jaden Daniels was getting all the headlines and everything, but they were running the ball really well. They were one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. And I think over the last 5-6 games, it's not the total opposite, but they are not having nearly as much success. Brian Robinson Jr. has been out of the lineup, but he's been in the lineup. He was in the lineup this game, and it just was not effective for this team.
They just aren't. We have to remember, as a team, as a whole team, they aren't that talented. But a not that talented team gets a jump start when they suddenly get an elite quarterback. And I'm here, you know me, I'm the Jaden defender anyway.
Yeah.
People are going to go, well, what's wrong with Jaden now that they're on this losing streak? And I'll sit here and go, nothing.
You just think it's the team.
Yeah.
The team's not talented.
They're just not that good. They're not 7-2 good to eventually go 13-4 good. They were never 13 win good. They won close games. They ran the ball. They got some stuff done against some teams that they are better than. They're a lot better. They still could be a wild card, but there's still a lot of things to improve with this roster.
I think Kevon Turpin was my most impressive, to go back to what you were talking about with special teams. But it's sort of like a 2-week thing here for him. Obviously, this past week, he had the punt return touchdown, which was awesome. One of the best punt returns that we're going to see this season. Last week, he had 3 targets, 3 catches, 85 receiving yards, 65 after the catch, and 1 touchdown. So he's becoming a legitimate weapon. I mean, speaking of teams that feels like they lack talent, Dallas Cowboys, it's CeeDee Lamb and
find a way.
Who is after this? And it's opening the door for guys like Turpin to be like, hey, I'm fast. Putting his hand up and be like, all right, what do you guys offer? And he goes, fast. And it's like, all right, cool. We're going to emphasize that. He's getting the opportunities, and obviously it's proven to be very, very useful for them on the offensive side of the ball. But that's a team that needs to get better talent-wise as well. I don't disagree with you that I don't think the Washington Commanders are where they want to be talent-wise. I still wonder if there's no big adjustment for Cliff. Is he the guy who you want to?
I think you have to
figure that talent out.
You're not gonna upend that after the first year of it.
Just because of how it was successful it was out of the gate?
Yes, and understanding where you're at as a roster, right? I mean, I think even to this point, even at 7-5 now, to be where they are and for Jaden to be where he is, I don't see any reason to upend that. I know there's a history, and I know there's all the memes and all the stuff all over Twitter about after such and such week, and even going. You can't upend that, right? I don't see any reason to be thinking about Cliff Kingsbury's job here. Almost no matter, because let's be real, you could end the season today, and the Commanders' season's a success, considering where they've been the last few years and especially last year.
That's fair.
Last year they gave up the most points in football.
That's fair.
And their offense was just horrendous. I mean, and this year the talent is different in certain spots with some veterans they signed, but they still need a lot more before they're a perennial contender like that. I don't see any reason to shake up anything they're doing. Just keep riding the process and building the roster.
I think it's fair. It's a fair assessment. Anybody most disappointing, most impressive that we didn't hit for you?
Impressive. I had just had the Cowboys. Honestly, I thought especially the first half of this game was probably the best their defense looked all year. And in fact, 78.3 defense.
Defense is coming along better.
Yeah.
A lot better than it was at the beginning.
It's at least giving them a chance. And
yes.
their first half defensive grade, 78.3, the best in any first half of a game this season. And
there
that was part of it was, the Cowboys defense did play well. This isn't just about the Commanders here. They came out and played well. They only allowed 3.8 yards per play in the first half. That'll do. You get off to a good start. You stay in a tight game. You wait for a team to make mistakes. You can pull an upset, and that's what they did.
If you're looking for the best way to win huge prizes during one of the best NFL weeks of the year, look no further than DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. This Thanksgiving, you can play free for $1 million in top prizes. That's right. Any customer, new or existing, can play free for the $1 million top prize with their next $5 deposit. Got some good games coming up on Thanksgiving. The one, I think a matchup that could be pretty good here, Miami Dolphins. They're figuring out on the passing game. They're taking on the Green Bay Packers. Packers sort of struggling in the secondary, especially at the cornerback level. Could be a juicy matchup. Make it a real happy Thanksgiving with DraftKings. All customers can download the DraftKings app and use that promo code PFF. That is promo code PFF to play free for a shot at the $1 million top prize only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. If you've got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, you can call 877-8-HOPE-NY or just text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions do apply. Void where prohibited. Minimum $5 deposit is required for this. Reward issued as $5 tickets for November 28 Fantasy Football Millionaire. All right, the next game we're hitting, speaking of the Dolphins, Patriots-Dolphins. Miami wins this one 34-15. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for the Miami Dolphins in this one. Figure it's going to be a lot of trench guys because the trenches were fantastic for Miami yesterday. Edge rusher Chop Robinson's at the top of the list with a 91.5 overall grade. Wide receiver Jalen Waddle right behind him with a 91.1. Defensive tackle Zach Seiler with an 89.6. Tight end Jonnu Smith an 83.8. And then edge rusher Titus Bowser with a 76.1. Tua Tagovailoa in this game is 68.2 overall grade. On the other side of things, New England's top graded player, tight end Austin Hooper, 79.1. Linebacker Christian Ellis, a 78.4. Linebacker Jelani Tavai, 75.1. Cornerback Jonathan Jones with a 73.8. Edge rusher Keon White, a 72.7. And then Drake May in this one, a 62.0. Pretty lopsided in this one. What's the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
For my money, this game was over at halftime. It was 21-0 at half. Dolphins in the first half set season highs in offensive grade and EPA per play. 281 total yards at 7.6 per play, 6 explosive passes, and 105 yards after the catch. I think that's a big thing, getting Tua back, getting the ball where it needs to go. The addition of Jonnu Smith, who's been really good for the last month or so in their offense as another yards after catch threat. This first half in this game, the way the Dolphins got rolling, this is what everybody's afraid of. If they're going to make a playoff run or get into the playoffs and you go, okay, this is Tua and Hill and Waddle and now Jonnu Smith, and they didn't even run the ball well yesterday, and they still put up all these points and were just so efficient. This is the avalanche that can come with the Dolphins offense when Tua's healthy, and they're right, and they showed it in the first half of this game, and that was it from there.
My side that told the story is just the Dolphins in the trenches overall. I think this is a really good day for the Dolphins in two areas where there are big question marks for them. I think certainly with Bradley Chubb and with Jalen Phillips suffering their injuries, and Chubb has yet to come back. Jalen Phillips came back at the beginning of the year. Now he's hurt again. We wondered who was really going to be a difference maker along that Dolphins defensive line this past week against the New England Patriots. 4 sacks, 26 pressures. Chop Robinson had that 90.8 pass rush grade. Zach Seiler had the 86.8 pass rush grade. So that group as a whole overall was playing really well on the defensive side of things, and now they've strung together a couple of weeks. It's not just this week, but a couple of weeks where the Dolphins D-line has been playing well. Then on the offensive side of things, the offensive line for the Miami Dolphins, 8 pressures allowed all game, only 4 in the second half, so it was an even split, 4-4. Tua Tagovailoa, 20 for 27 with 247 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half when he was kept clean. So when the Dolphins' offensive line is doing their job, this is obviously an offense that looks very different than the one that we were talking about that was struggling to get any sort of explosiveness when Tua was hurt. So it's just a totally new look Dolphins offensive and defensive line. But then to flip things to the other side, it's not rocket science to see Patriots offensive line sucks. I mean, there's just not really a way around it. They are the most disappointing. They have to be. Right now, 12 weeks into the season, they have the most pressures given up. They have the lowest pass blocking grade as a team. They have the lowest run blocking grade as a team. They can't run the ball. They can't block anybody in the pass game, and they're giving up all sorts of pressures. Doesn't matter if it's Jacoby Brissett. Doesn't matter if it's Drake May. Wouldn't have mattered if it was Joe Montana or Tom Brady back there. Like this was always going to be a major struggle. Well, I guess Tom Brady probably would have made a difference anyways. He's probably getting the ball. He's probably getting the ball out in 2 seconds flat.
Tampa guy a little biased with that.
Against this offensive line, but the Patriots offensive line is just at this point in time. You got 5-6 games left of the season. You'd love to see progression from Drake May. I don't even know what progression looks like for Drake May at this point outside of don't get hurt. And now we're sort of at a dangerous part of the season for him and his rookie year, because I still think the footwork is sort of a mess from him, but that's not going to get better behind this defensive line or behind this offensive line. That's going to be a full off-season type of a thing. So the footwork's really not going to get that much better. How he sees the field, yeah, okay, like he could get, I guess, maybe a little bit better with some more experience down the stretch, but behind this offensive line, how many opportunities are you really going to get to read the field the way that you need to? So at this point, it feels weird to say that a successful season for Drake May is for him to not get hurt.
Isn't that what we thought the whole time, though?
Yeah, but now it's at the point where the offensive line is even worse than I thought that it was going to be. Now we're at a point where, like, I don't even know how much progress he's making with him being out there. And I'm not trying to say, okay, well, don't play Drake May. You got to play Drake May.
I think in this game maybe he didn't because the Dolphins blasted him. But I think in several of the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think he's made a lot of progress. And I think the fact that he's been willing to use his athleticism to get out of trouble has been an asset just for him to just learn how to make plays at NFL speed and at the NFL level. We knew this was not going to be perfect coming into the season.
Okay,
but
so
I think we've at least learned enough to know for a fact he's the guy.
I don't disagree with you, but now that we've seen sort of like the early progress from him, I don't know how much else he makes for the rest of the year, right? I don't know how many leaps he's taking. Because next they got the Colts. All right, not the best defensive line in the NFL, but they got Buckner, they got Latu. They got Stewart, who's a monster in the middle, and like they got some rotational guys they'll play out there. So it's not the most feared defensive line in the NFL. But when you're the worst offensive line in the NFL, if they put Latu against the right tackle for the Patriots, whoever it's going to be, because it was Jacobs in this game and here in a 19.6 pass blocking grade, if they put Latu even as a rookie against this guy, his pass win percentage is going to be in the 30s. He's going to terrorize Drake May. So it's that, and then it's the Cardinals. All right, the Cardinals' defensive line's not that great, but then you go Bills, Chargers, Bills. That sucks. That's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, the injury thing I get. Now,
that's all I'm saying. The most disappointing thing for me is certainly the Patriots' offensive line because we knew that it was going to be bad. It's unquestionably the worst offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer with Drake May there.
Yeah, no, it's going to be the entire focus of the offseason, or at least it should be. I think even if they have a choice, say, on the draft between a weapon and a lineman, I almost think you have to take an offensive lineman.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
they're going to have a rough decision. They're going to have a rough decision if it's Travis Hunter or a left tackle.
So I will say this: we're going to record the Fixing the New England Patriots episode of NFL Stock Exchange later today, so it'll be up Monday evening. So you guys can check that out if you want. We'll take a deep dive into it. Just a little preview of that. They've got the money in free agency to bring in like a mercenary offensive line.
Do what Washington did.
Yeah, like
they brought in
mercenary offensive line.
They brought in at least a bunch of average guys who could fill the job, and now they still need cornerstones.
I'm talking average or better. Like Trey Smith's out there. Like you go get Trey Smith, right? You've got options where you could go get guys who could be legitimate difference makers for you, even if it's just on the interior offensive line. So to me, like this is an opportunity to go get a mercenary offensive line and still potentially be able to play best player available around the top 3 where I think they're going to finish. Anyways, getting back to this game. Most impressive, most disappointing. Who do you got?
I'll go on the other side of that. Chop Robinson. And I think we have a fun development here. And I think, look, a 90.8 pass rush grade in this game. You mentioned 30-something% pass rush win rate. How about 50 in this game? How about 50? Half the reps he was winning in this game. 10 pressures, 2 sacks. And you know something fun I found is, so earlier in the season, obviously he's a rookie, he's getting his feet wet, right? He's trying to figure it out. But earlier in the season, he was playing mostly on the blind side over the left tackle, right? It wasn't really working for him. The last 3 games, including this one, obviously, we move him to the front side. Let's put him over the right tackle.
As a right tackle merchant.
Maybe so, but you know what?
I'm just
right tackles are people too, Trevor. Don't do that to them. Some of them are very good. But here's a fun split this year. When he rushes over the left tackle, 61.5 pass rush grade. When he rushes over the right tackle, 90.6.
Yeah, but he's also like been his best the last 2 weeks.
But let's take this back to Penn State.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. Okay. You were one step ahead. I didn't let you finish.
Last year at Penn State, his pass rush grade over the right tackle was 10 points higher than over the left. Maybe that's just where he belongs. And look, there are guys in the NFL who are blindside guys. Right. Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett. There are guys who are front side guys. T.J. Watt, Aiden Hutchinson. They mostly line up on that front side. Mm-hmm. maybe that's just where he belongs. For some reason, he likes turning the corner on the right tackle instead, and he could be an elite player from there. Because even at Penn State, too, when they had him on the front side.
No, he was always going up against the right tackle in his most successful plays.
Yeah,
yep,
absolutely.
I remember.
Slide him over. This has happened mainly the last 3 weeks. And yes, you're right. These are his 3 highest pass rush grades of the season, but I don't think that's any sort of coincidence. Maybe that's just what he is. He'll be a front side guy, and so be it. I mean, if he's going to tee off and have a 90 pass rush grade and win half the reps as a pass rusher, I'm not arguing with it. Leave him there every snap. I wouldn't care.
I got to give Jalen Waddle a shout out because what was it, 2 weeks ago on the preview show, we were kind of like, where is Jalen Waddle in this offense? He was on pace for career lows basically in every category, in targets, catches, yards, touchdowns, everything. This past week, 9 targets, 8 catches, 144 yards, 1 touchdown, 90.1 receiving grade. Season average is 70.1, so a whole 20 points higher this past game. 25% threat percentage, which was his second highest mark of the season. So as the offense has really gotten back to form with Tua out there, we are seeing Jalen Waddle now obviously get more involved, and obviously this offense is great when Waddle and Hill are playing very well together. So wanted to shout Waddle out for a season high of a day that he had this past week. You're most disappointed before we move on.
Just look, anytime the Dolphins tee off and they get all the RPOs and slants and things going, there's always someone in kind of that hook zone, box safety, linebacker kind of area that's the victim, and it was Kyle Duggar in this game. 6 allowed catches, 74 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 29.1 coverage grade. He was just kind of the main victim of this offense. This happens to a lot of guys in this position, and he's the read guy for all the RPOs and even some of the things they were running and getting people behind his zones and things like that. Just a tough day for Kyle Duggar, and that's really a matchup thing with the Dolphins.
Bucs Giants. Game is never close. 30-7. Tampa Bay wins this one, goes to New York and takes the dub. Tampa's top 5 graded players on the day. The ageless one, the future Hall of Famer, Levante David at the top of the list with a 91.9. Edge rusher Yaya Diaby with an 85.3. Defensive tackle Vita Vea with an 84.4. Safety Mike Edwards an 82.6. Welcome back game there for him. Edge rusher Anthony Nelson an 82.0. And then Baker Mayfield an elite 92.5. Boy, this was a game when Mayfield was having fun out there, and you could see it on the broadcast, you could see it on the field, and obviously you could see it in how successful that they were playing when they're all playing fun together. On the other side of things, for the New York Giants, Dexter Lawrence at the top of the list with an 87.0, and then we take a pretty big nosedive into the next grades. Defensive tackle DJ Davidson with a 71.6, Kayvon Thibodeau 68.6, Bobby Okereke with a 68.4, Tyler Newman is 63.1, and then Tommy DeVito in this game starting for Daniel Jones, a 51.1. Wasn't close on the scoreboard. Didn't look like it was ever close, certainly when we were watching the football game. Stat that told the story here, Dalton.
The quarterbacks, of course. It was the story going into it, at least one of them especially, and it's the story coming out of it. You have a guy in Baker Mayfield who absolutely teed off, 24 of 32 big-time throws, the 92.5 grade, and I believe he was the highest-graded quarterback this week so far.
Wouldn't shock me.
And then you had the other team starting Tommy DeVito, who had a 51.1 and 31 passing yards in the first half. I mean, sometimes, Trevor, I love all the numbers and the analytics and all that stuff, but you know what? Sometimes football is really simple. One team has a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. We could say Mayfield's playing at that level this year. And the other has a guy who they thought that was their third stringer and is now starting on an offense that wasn't good already. And this is where we're at. The difference in quarterbacks in this game. But yeah, Mayfield, tell you what, is anyone more blindly confident than him? He is just going to come out there.
I don't think it's totally blind confidence.
Not blind. He's good. He's just going to.
Yeah. He is probably the easiest player to root for in the league. Like, when you have Mayfield as your quarterback and he is playing well.
You got to love him blocking downfield, dude, for Bucky, right?
Right. And it's stuff like that. And there was a play where, oh, man, who hit him out of bounds? I think it was Isaiah Simmons who, hit him late as he was running out of bounds. And he hits him. He pushes him. It's not like it's like a total, knocks him out type of a hit. But, he gives him a little shove. He gives him a little swipe, whatever. And Mayfield's momentum carries him over to the bench, and he kind of, falls into the bench. I mean, the speed at which the other Buccaneer players, specifically the trench players, immediately surround Isaiah Simmons and just escort him away from Baker Mayfield just shows you how much fun that this team is playing with. And obviously when you're up on the scoreboard and when everything seems to be working, that's sort of my stat that told the story, is that everything was working for the Bucs, nothing was working for the New York Giants. Time of possession, Bucs 34 minutes to the Giants 26. Yards, Bucs 450 yards to the Giants 245. Red zone percentage, success rate, Bucs 80%, Giants 33%. Very clearly, you knew who was going to win the football game. You didn't even need necessarily PFF to be able to tell you that.
Yeah.
It was going to be a blowout no matter what.
I think most people,
There's
the
no,
vast majority
there's no
of
big
people
like
knew
underlying
going into it.
thing. The Bucs played well. The Bucs played together. The Giants didn't, and they're reeling. I think a take a step back conversation here is, I'm a Brian Daboll guy. I think that Brian Daboll is a really good ball coach. When we were doing the Fix Your Franchise episode for the New York Giants for NFLSC about a month ago, I said I'd keep Daboll, and I think that they should keep Daboll. But he's towing the line here because however these next 5 games go for them, this team kind of looks like they're quitting. This team kind of looks like they're very apathetic, that they do not really care. That
They said as much after the game. They're
right.
Like, not everybody here is trying so hard.
And the problem is, how do you bring that coach back? That's the issue. It's not that I don't think that Brian Daboll is a good coach. I think he's a great coach. I really do. But is it too much losing in New York for Brian Daboll to sort of save this roster and the players that are on it? Because you can't get rid of all of them. You can't get rid of all the players that like aren't, bought in and winners. Contracts don't work like that in the NFL. It takes you years to be able to do that. When I watched Dan Quinn's final couple of years at the Falcons, they fought for this dude. They played hard for this dude. Looking in Tampa. Tampa's had a bad couple of weeks here, right? Season could be over. They could give up on Todd Bowles. There's been some bad defensive moments with him. The second they have the ability to sort of turn it around, they fight for him. They play for him. It doesn't look like that's happening in New York.
It's a void in leadership for sure.
And that's I am less confident. Not even that I thought the Giants were going to win this football game against the Buccaneers, but the way that it looked, I am less confident that Brian Daboll is the head coach of the New York Giants today than I've ever been before because of how that looked and how the players sort of didn't really care yesterday.
It feels like there's another start over coming, and what I'm about to go through isn't. It goes further back than Shane and Daboll. I was trying to find the most disappointing in this game. And it's funny because this game was 30-7 and you would think I could just pick anything and do it. And I was like, what is it? I'm looking through the grades and the numbers and all that stuff. And then I'm looking and I'm like, every guy I look at him like first round pick, or he's starting because the first round pick failed. And then I go back and look at this and I go, the Giants are what happens when a team just doesn't draft well. Or the moments they do draft well, it's not handled properly. I could go back on this to 2018, all right? Saquon Barkley, he's on the Eagles now. Daniel Jones, just cut him. All right, this is 2019 now. Dexter Lawrence, superstar, fine. All right, you hit the best nose tackle in football. DeAndre Baker made it 1 year with the Giants. Andrew Thomas, star when he's healthy, but he's had 2 season-ending injuries. Kadarius Toney didn't make it 2 years. Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't panned out. Evan Neal hasn't panned out. Deonte Banks hasn't panned out. And Malik Neighbors, now you have this train wreck situation at quarterback with your whole offense and this super talented player in Malik Neighbors. And you would think maybe, just maybe, even with Tommy DeVito in there, you go, all right, we got to get the ball to Malik Neighbors. He didn't have a target in the first half of this game. And he said as much afterwards. He goes, I don't know. I didn't get a target until the second half when I asked me. And this is the type of thing that can happen a little bit. I mean, I've seen this with Garrett Wilson at times with the Jets where it's like, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. I can't win the game by myself. But
right.
When you're a team that whiffs on most of your first-round picks for an extended period of time, this is what you're going to look like. You have to hit on the first-rounders. The day 2 and 3 stuff, we can argue, obviously, the Chiefs, they hit on day 3 all the time, and the Eagles hit on day 2 and 3 all the time, right? But at the very least, if you hit your first-rounders, you can find stars and get your way in it. And the only one here that is currently on the field, because Andrew Thomas is out with another season-ending injury, right, is Dexter Lawrence. And I'm sorry, I know if he's the best nose tackle in football, that's great. But that alone is not going to win you a whole lot of ball games, if any. This is where we're at. This is what a team looks like when they don't hit on first-round picks.
My most impressive in this game is Bucky Irving. He continues to play very, very well. 12 carries, 87 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 7.4 yards after contact per attempt average. Love to see that. 6 targets, 6 receptions, 64 yards. He was all over the place in this one. Over 150 all-purpose yards here for Bucky Irving. It is a pretty deep rotation there in Tampa between Sean Tucker and Rachaad White, but Bucky Irving, I think, proves to have the highest ROI every single week, and the blocking's been great for him. There's no doubt about it. Got to give a shout out to those guys up front for the Buccaneers who played well yet again this week against a talented defensive line. Maybe not one that's playing as well as they could have, sort of like you mentioned, but a talented defensive line, and Irving was able to play very well. My most disappointing, just Giants on money downs. I mentioned, 33% in the red zone, but also over 2 on 4th down, 45% on 3rd down. Like, it's not a team that's clicking right now. And you mentioned the Malik Neighbors, zero targets in the first half. That's an issue as well. What about you? Most impressive, most disappointing?
Disappointing is just kind of that first round rant that I went on, and just how the Giants have scouted the whole bit for the last half decade, really. And anytime, because I don't know how much longer he'll be in the league, anytime I get to bring up Levante David, I'm going to do it. Highest graded player in this game. Sorry, other than Baker Mayfield, highest graded player in this game. 5 tackles, forced incompletion, 3 pressures. A forced fumble early in the third quarter when it was kind of the one glimmer of hope for the Giants, where they had the one really probably the best drive of the day. And, of course, he comes up and punches out a fumble from Tyrone Tracy, and the game then is pretty much officially over even early in the third quarter. David just continues to do it. He's ageless, and he's still one of the best linebackers in football.
Love the shout-out. You love to hear it. Panthers, close with Kansas City.
It's always close with Kansas City.
Didn't quite get the win, though. Yeah, but for the Panthers, I know there's no moral victories, but this is kind of a moral victory. Like, if you're ever going to have a moral victory, this was actually a moral victory.
You start to wonder if the Chiefs do it on purpose, don't you?
Chiefs win this game.
Let's have some fun today. That's all they'll do. Just, we'll play another close one.
Chiefs win this game 30-27. Don't take anything away from Dave Canales to Carolina. Don't you do that.
You know I love Dave.
We'll take a look at the top 5 graded Kansas City Chief players at the very top of the list. It's a tight end, of course. Oh, wait, it's not Travis Kelce. It's Noah Gray, 82.0. Creed Humphrey, next on the list with an 80.4. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, a 77.0. Edge rusher Michael Dana with a 75.5. And then running back Kareem Hunt, a 74.1. Patrick Mahomes in this game, a 75.9 PFF grade. On Carolina's side of things, wide receiver David Moore, who caught a touchdown in this one, 82.4 overall grade. Edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney, an 81.3. Edge rusher DJ Wonnum, a 75.6. Linebacker Josie Jewell, 73.1. Offensive tackle Taylor Moton with a 70.7. Bryce Young, look at that, 83.9 PFF grade in this one. Stat that told the story, Dalton. What do we got?
All right, we'll get to Bryce in a minute, but I'm going to start with the Chiefs' defense. All of a sudden, maybe a little vulnerable. Second lowest defensive grade of the season for the Chiefs. Lowest run D grade. Chuba Hubbard with a good day, too, on the ground.
Another week.
Pass rush, Chris Jones, the only player on the whole team with at least a 65 pass rush grade. And over the last 2 weeks, and you're not used to this with this Kansas City secondary, and I'll actually go to most disappointing here with it, they've given up 14 explosive pass plays in the last 2 weeks. And that's not the usual mode of operation for them. If there's one thing they do usually, it's not give up big explosive plays that can flip the field. Usually you have to grind your way through. You got to run the ball. You got to kind of work your way through all of Steve Spagnuolo's coverages. But I think in this game specifically, it's really about the safeties. Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Shamari Connor, Jaden Hicks, they combined to allow 11 catches for 174 yards. I think the Panthers, Dave Canales did a really nice job of isolating his receivers, getting them on these safeties, and they can often move around. They can be in the slot. They can be in different positions, but gave up 8 first downs in those 11 catches and combined for a 54 coverage grade. Whatever's going on in the middle of this Chiefs defense, they need to figure it out because the safeties seem out of sync. I think we know McDuffie's great on the outside. Wasn't spectacular in this game, but Trent McDuffie's great out there. We know they're struggling at the other corner spot with some injury, especially with Jalen Watson done for the year, but the safeties are really... They're usually a constant for them, especially with as much as they can move around in this defense, and right now they're struggling. Maybe it's just a cold spell. These things go sometimes. It's a long season, but they really struggled in this game.
Before we get to Bryce Young, Panthers defensive line played well in this game. 4 sacks, 26 pressures. That's the most that they have had in both of those categories in a single game. DJ Wonnum, Jadeveon Clowney, 70-plus pass rush grades and 7-plus pressures amongst the two of them. And so it was nice. I mean, this is one of the least productive defensive lines in the NFL so far this season, and they were able to get after Patrick Mahomes. It felt like every time we looked up and we were watching that game, Patrick Mahomes was running. He was getting out of the pocket, and I know he's comfortable doing that. And so he's just a quarterback that you're going to see that quite a bit. But he was under pressure, man. And he's hard to bring down. He's hard to get and make sacks. And obviously, some of the rushes that he had in this game ended up being a big deal when it came to the final score. But really, it was the best day yet, I think, for the Panthers defensive line that since Derek Brown went down has not been a lot of hope. And I think that they're playing better as of late. Shoot, you talking about teams not giving up, right? Carolina's, they already had a quarterback change, right? They've had opportunities to sort of give up. It's a first-time head coach, and it feels like they did not give up, certainly when they were facing the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs in this one. And then we'll get to Bryce Young. Bryce Young in this game, 21 for 35, 261 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He had 5 big-time throws in this game. 5.
That'll do.
It's pretty awesome. Passing grade against single coverage, 90.6. 4 big-time throws against single coverage alone. That's what we talked about with Bryce Young, right? He was not mentally where he needed to be to attack single coverage. At the beginning of the season, those first 2 games, can't remember, it was the Saints, and then I can't remember who the other one was against. He just looked terrified to attack single coverage the way that he needed to. He would throw it. He'd throw the ball at single coverage, but it wasn't close. It was either so short it was never really going to get completed because he didn't want to throw a turnover, or it was so far beyond his head because it was basically like, okay, well, I got to give either my wide receiver or nobody a chance to get it. Well, you were giving nobody a chance to get it way more often than you were giving your receivers a chance to get it. No Jalen Coker in this game, who's been the highest graded receiver for them this entire season. They're throwing Adam Thielen. They're getting production out of Thielen, out of Jatavian Sanders before he went out of this game with an injury. David Moore at wide receiver. Bryce looked great. And you know what else I loved about Bryce? Over the middle stuff. Between the numbers. Wasn't afraid to do it. They said he couldn't. They said he needed a stepladder. They said he couldn't see over the offensive line. Well, here he is attacking over the middle of the field in the offensive line against the Kansas City Chiefs. This looked like a fed-up, focused Bryce Young in this game. And it was awesome to watch him work. This was the closest thing to Alabama Bryce Young that we have seen yet from him in this career. It was the highest passing grade that he has had in a single game in which he has started the whole game through the last 2 years of his NFL career. And his 5 big-time throws in this game were by far the most he has had in a single game performance. He had 3 once in his rookie season. The rest of the time, it's been 2 and 1 if he's had a big-time throw in a game at all. He's not even had 4 big-time throws. This one, he has 5. It's fantastic to watch Bryce Young, and it was great to see him play the best version of NFL football that he has played yet.
This is 3 weeks of this now, and I'm with you on Young. I'm going to stick with that same topic. And you mentioned it, single coverage, tight windows, 4 of those big-time throws into tight windows, clean pocket, which was something that was concerning. This game, a 91.1 passing grade from a clean pocket. And he's done this, what did I say with Anthony Richardson last week? If you do something right, okay, do it again. For Bryce, it's actually 3 weeks in a row now. The last 3 weeks, or I should say his last 3 games going back to week 9, he's the 5th highest graded quarterback in football. He's playing good football, and I thought in this game he just looked, A, much more decisive, and B, under pressure. He doesn't have like a super high pressured passing grade and didn't do anything crazy, but it's the throwaways, or it's the willingness to take off and run and just take what you can get and avoiding the disaster play that I think made just as big a part, as the big-time throws did of like, okay, there are guys who can do both where it's like, oh, we're great when everything's cool and we do something disastrous, right? Like, say, I don't know, like Will Levis has done plenty of times this year where he avoided disaster plays too. And I think that's big when you talk about racing the floor and what Bryce Young could be. We have to sit here and wonder, if he plays the next 5 games like he's played these last 3, do the Panthers have to draft a guy? Could
nope.
they? Right? Could you walk in and stay patient and surround him with more weapons and get this defense going and have a defense that gives you a chance and at least maybe wait another year and see, okay, if he's going to play like this, we have a different conversation.
We obviously have 5 more games to evaluate Bryce Young, but certainly at this point, you're not drafting a quarterback in the first round if you're the Carolina Panthers. You're way too and drafting a quarterback in the first round was sort of like you were reluctant to do that. Like that was going to suck for you if you were going to have to do that because you have so many other needs throughout the rest of the team. So the fact that Bryce is playing well enough to not only be close against the Kansas City Chiefs, but also to give you something to look forward to next year, this combination of Bryce Young and Dave Canales and allowing you to take that whatever it's going to be, number 1, number 2, number 3 overall pick, and either pick in the top 3 or even trade back and get some much better players and much more talent on this football team. That's the ideal scenario for the Carolina Panthers. So it's playing out pretty well. Most disappointing in this one, just a down year. We talked about coverage earlier in the show. Just a down year for J.C. Horn overall. 8 targets, 8 catches allowed, 81 receiving yards, 5 first downs, 43.3 coverage grade. You just want to see better from J.C. Horn. But to be honest with you, if he's getting his bad year out of the way right now, fine.
He doesn't have a whole lot of help either.
That's what I'm saying.
It's another thing with the
if you're
secondary.
getting your bad J.C. Horn year out of the way and he comes out next year swinging with a better defense around him,
it's another thing with the secondary thing where we saw Patrick Surtain had a year like this last year. He wasn't great last year, but he also had no help at all. I mean, Horn could just bounce back next year, and that's just the way coverage stuff goes.
It's just how coverage goes. Anything else in this game before we move on?
No, that's about it. Nice job, Bryce Young, even in a loss. Gotta love it.
Love that. Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans. Houston Texans obviously winning this game, right? I mean, the Titans, there was no way that they were going to win this game.
Didn't I try to tell you?
This wasn't going to happen.
This was the game.
I got to admit to the people.
This was the game of the weekend that
So Dalton rolls in at 12:55, okay? The games are kicking off in 5 minutes, all right, to the office where we're watching the games. And he sits down and we're just chit-chatting. What's up? How you doing? Whatever. He tells me, God, I kind of got a good feeling about Tennessee this week. And I'm like, yeah, I don't hate it as well. We'll dig into obviously some of the Houston Texans stuff and why we thought that could have been the case. And he's like, yeah, I kind of like this one. He's like, man, and the more we thought about it, I was like, all right, you know what? Let's put a little cheddar on the line. Let's do a little bet for this game. Let's bet Titans money line. Let's have a little bit of fun. So I'm sitting there, and then I see that I got a profit boost for a 3-leg parlay. And I was like, all right, well, now it'd be financially irresponsible to not build a parlay at this point. You already feel good about the foundation. Go with a money line with the underdog team. So we select that, and I go, ooh, Jeffrey Simmons getting a sack. Jeffrey Simmons going to get a sack in this game. Struggling interior offensive line for the Houston Texans. I press that and I go man, what else can happen in this game? I was like, Nick Westbrook-Akine caught a pass, no DeAndre Hopkins, or he caught a touchdown the other day. I was like, let's throw something on Nick Westbrook-Akine. And then I was like, all right, well, we could. I think it was you or it was Ben Lindsay was like, oh, what about Tony Pollard? Tony Pollard could get an anytime TD, just a nice way to boost it. So we're cooking up this beautiful 4-leg parlay. Titans money line. Anytime touchdown Nick Westbrook-Akine, anytime touchdown Tony Pollard, and a Jeffrey Simmons sack.
It all made sense.
And you know what happened? The clock struck 1 o'clock, and then the sack parlay wasn't there, and then I was like, okay, well, let me try to find something else. Let me try to find something else here. And then all of a sudden, the Texans took the kick back to the 20-yard line. I was like, oh, okay, now we're not going to bet this.
Just locked on you. Yep.
If you would have showed up to the office 5 minutes earlier, we'd be so rich we wouldn't even be sitting here
I was moving slow. I had an early college show yesterday morning.
Or we'd be sitting here with a giant pile of money behind us, like the Joker, on fire. We wouldn't even need it. That'd be like the secondary money.
You had to let me know beforehand. You're like, I got the gambling itch today. Get in here a little early so we can talk about this. See, I was on time. I will hold to the fact that I was on time. I just wasn't on time for your impulses.
Well, that's the real on time. Anyways, shout out to the Tennessee Titans for winning this game 32-17 or 32-27. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded Tennessee Titans in this one. Linebacker Kenneth Murray with a elite 90.1 overall grade. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley with a 77.2. Defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat a 73.7. Guard Dylan Radins with a 72.6. And then cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr. 71.8. Will Levis in this game a 63.6 on Houston's side of things. Edge rusher, man, a lot of edge rushers in their top 5, starting with Will Anderson with an elite 90.5 overall grade. Edge rusher Derek Barnett getting in the mix as well with an 84.6. Safety Jimmy Ward, number 3, with an 84.0. Wide receiver Nico Collins coming in at number 4 with an 81.3. And then rounding it out with another edge rusher, Danielle Hunter with a 77.3. Quarterback CJ Stroud in this game, a 66.3 overall grade. Outside of the unrealized financial gains, what's your stat that told the story here, Dalton?
I'm going to live with that for a few weeks there, aren't I?
You are. Yeah, you are.
Okay. So I have an issue with the Texans and their offense.
You should, because that's also my stat that told the story here.
So here's mine. Offensively in this game, they scored 3 points in the second half. Okay, they got the Jimmy Ward pick 6, and all that was a big thing. You got the Will Levis play of the week, that whole bit. But on offense, they scored 3 points in the second half of this game. 27 plays, 83 yards, barely over 3 yards a play in the second half, okay? And this is something of a theme here. Not something of a theme. This is a theme. Trevor, in their last 6 games, they have 1 second-half touchdown. 30 drives.
I talked about this last week, and it didn't get better.
It's getting worse. 30 drives, 1 touchdown in the second half. And it was the Joe Mixon 1-yarder last week against the Cowboys that had no consequence at all. 29th in offensive grade in the second half, 30th EPA per play, last in successful play rate. C.J. Stroud in the second half of the last 6 games, a 53.7 passing grade. This team, I don't know if I've ever seen it just half to half like this. I don't know what happens during halftime that all of a sudden they just lose the sauce, but
not enough Uncrustables.
They're legit a top 5 offense in the first half of games and a bottom 5 offense in the second half. I don't know what happens here. I might have to dig into this and see if it's anything different or if it's just not anything different and there's no adjustments. Mm-hmm. But this is legit a bottom feeder offense in the second half of these games. They've scored 1 touchdown in the last 30 second half drives. They're just not. It just shuts down.
Yeah.
And it's the same darn players that play in the first half and put up 17 points in the first half of this game. What is it? Because it's legit. It's not just the Lions game when they turn the ball over. You go, okay, they turned the ball over in the Lions game. Right, starting out, the Lions got momentum.
Got to clean it up, yeah.
But it's every single week. The second half, even if I go beyond the last 6 weeks, it's the whole season. They're a bottom 5 offense in the second half of these games. And I don't know why, because they're a top 5 offense in the first half. This is a problem. The Texans have major issues offensively, and they might win this division by default, but I don't know how, with the way they're playing right now, how they're getting by the first round.
Yeah, I'm with you entirely, and I'll even take it even further. This offense is hot and cold at all times. I mean, the second half obviously is the main culprit where things really start to stall for them, but 7 drives in this game of 5 plays or less. 7 drives. So a lot of them were 4 plays, 5-play drives, so you can't technically call them 3 and outs. It's 7 drives in this game of 5 plays or less. They had 5 punts. They had the second most punt, which was the second most punts in the NFL this week. And they have 56 punts on the season. That's the 3rd most punts in the NFL. We think this offense, we think the way that Joe Mixon is playing and having C.J. Stroud and getting Nico Collins back and having Tank Dell out there. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is out for the season and they're going through some stuff along the interior offensive line. They got to get way better at that. But we think about this offense, that's way more hot and cold than it should be. And I agree with you. Right now, they are not winning a playoff game. And if there's a time when you would like to be sort of sputtering on offense, it's right now. Because you still have a 2-game lead over the Indianapolis Colts for the division title, and you got 5 weeks to figure it out. So if there's ever a good point to be in this situation for the Texans, it is right now. Because you've got time to figure it out, and you got a little bit of a cushion here on a 2-game lead with the Indianapolis Colts. But that doesn't win you a playoff game.
Your other problem is
you'll get whooped in a playoff game. I don't care if you're hosting.
You're going to line up hosting as the 4 seed, probably either the Steelers or the Ravens.
Right.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Right.
No, nobody's going to have fun.
No.
Not with that.
Well, the other guys will.
They will.
Yeah. TJ Watt will have fun.
My most impressive, I'll give a shout out to Jarvis Brownlee Jr. He wasn't the highest graded player in this game, but it's more of just over the last couple of weeks. I think that they found something here for a potential starting outside corner for them in the 5th round. So it's more of I've been pretty impressed with how he has been able to come along here at the NFL level and be able to be thrust in the starting position. 83.5 run defense grade in this game, 65.7 coverage grade. He allowed 91 reception yards. He allowed a touchdown, but he had 2 forced incompletions and an interception in this game. So very up and down for Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Not necessarily this game of most impressive, but the fact that they found a 5th round corner that they could at least go out there and play, and they know that he's going to be fearless enough to go make some plays for you. So wanted to shout out Jarvis Brownlee Jr. there. And then most disappointing to me, once again, is just the Texans offensive line, interior offensive line specifically. Patterson, Scruggs, Mason, all with pass blocking grades below 56.0, 11 pressures, 4 sacks allowed. We said this last week, and I think we even said it the week before. You're not going far in the playoffs with this offensive line playing the way that it is.
Right, and the run game specifically for me, Joe Mixon, 14 carries for 22 yards behind the offensive line that wasn't blocking. And fun fact, because I'm going to have it another time today, there have been 3 occasions this season where a team did not gain a first down on the ground. The Texans are one of them. The Texans were also the first one, I believe, in their earlier game against the Vikings. And I have another one. 2 of those 3 are this week. I have another one coming up later in the show here.
Oh,
fun fact. We had only 1 coming into the week, and we had 2 this week. The Texans were 1, and then most impressive. You have to like these Titans rookies. I do like Brownlee a lot. He's a dog. Like that run defense grade sticks out to me too because I think he had the best run D grade of any corner in the country at Louisville last year.
I loved watching him at the Senior Bowl too.
He doesn't
fearless.
He doesn't have the elite tools, but he's an absolute dog. You're right. I love him. Another guy I love though on the inside, big Tavondre Sweat, 366 pounds of just big person in your way. Like that's I don't even know how else to put it. He is just a gap plugger, a solid pass rusher there as well. 3 pressures and a sack in this game. And he's got the 9th best run defense grade of all defensive tackles right now.
I did not know that. Wow.
He is very much like when they drafted him, reminded me, I was like, oh, he could do like the DJ Reader thing where he's just big space plugger. He's not going to have the traditional stats. He's not going to do the Aaron Donald thing where he's got 15 sacks in a season, but his impact on Tennessee's defensive line, especially right next to Jeffrey Simmons, these 2 guys were the reason that I thought the Texans could struggle in this game. They both had good games. Simmons had a sack, as you well know, from our lack of timeliness there, but Sweat also had one, and he's been really good for them as a second-round pick and a guy. I think this Titans defensive line causes a lot of teams problems, a lot of their opponents. I think it's the first problem when you play against the Titans right now, even though the record's not great and they've got a lot of flaws, is how do we block these 2 big guys inside? Tavondre Sweat's been awesome so far.
Yep, he has. Good win for the Titans. Congrats to them. I know some Titans fans are probably like, oh, the draft pick. I'll celebrate the win. We'll talk about the draft in a little bit. Broncos-Raiders. Broncos win this game 29-19. Let's look at the top 5 graded Denver Broncos here in this one. Guard Quinn Miners, once again at the top of the list. Holy cow, another elite grade for him, a 94.0. Cornerback Riley Moss, a 90.5. Cornerback Patrick Tan, next on the list with an 83.0. Offensive tackle Garrett Bowles with a 79.9. And wide receiver Devon Vele with a 77.5. Bo Nix in this one, a 75.5 overall grade. On Las Vegas' side of things, edge rusher Max Crosby, an elite 90.0. Guard Jordan Meredith, an 81.0. Guard Dylan Parham with a 78.9. Offensive tackle Colt Miller, 77.7. And offensive tackle DJ Glaze, a 72.0. You love to see the trenches represented so well in the top 5 there for the Raiders. Gardner Minshew with a 57.6 overall grade. And my most disappointing, just getting right to it, is sort of the Raiders injury luck, right? You got Aiden O'Connell, the injury to his hand, and he can't grip the football, so he's been out for the last couple of weeks. Gardner Minshew now broke his collarbone in this game. He is out for the season as well. And so it's just a year from hell for the Las Vegas Raiders and a lot of the bad luck, and just we're not able to take that next step off of some momentum that they had the previous year. But that's my most disappointing. But your stat that told the story here, what do you got?
This is about 2 teams with different stories with turnovers. The Raiders, because of their quarterback situation mostly, the worst turnover margin in the NFL, and they had 2 in this game. And then you have the Broncos, who have gone now 3 straight games without a turnover. Bo Nix has 1 turnover-worthy play in his last 8 games. This was a 10-point difference in this game, and the 2 Raiders turnovers led to 10 points. This is just the difference. And I say it all the time, there is a value in just not screwing things up. And Sean Payton and Bo Nix right now, and their defense for that matter, for the most part, they're just not screwing anything up. And the Broncos are hard to beat because they don't beat themselves. That was the case in this game. You want my painful bet of the week this week.
Oh, what
mine was?
What was your painful bet of the week?
I had a parlay myself, and here's how it got killed. Broncos minus 5.5. Got it.
Oh, yeah.
Bo Nix 225. Got it.
Yeah.
Bo Nix 2 touchdowns. Got it. And I needed Raiders under 17.5. And that last field goal that Minshew let him down for got him over 17.5 because it was they had 16 points going into that drive, down 10, and they got the field goal first. So that was fair. We each get one.
It's tough.
Called it on Bo Nix. Credit to Ben there for calling out. Just go Bo Nix. He's got it.
Bo didn't blink in this game, and I think that's the stat that tells the story because it's the stat that has told the story over the last, 8-9 weeks of Bo Nix now at this point, who is sneaky Offensive Rookie of the Year?
I don't think it's sneaky. I think it's Nix or Daniels or Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers is the reason why it would kind of be sneaky because I think people have talked about Daniels, people have talked about Brock Bowers.
See, Bowers I think is the sneaky one.
Why? Just because he's a tight end, he's not a quarterback?
I haven't heard any noise that people think he should win it.
Oh man, I mean
I
have heard more about that, but Nick's getting that sort of recognition with that award, I think, is important now. And I'd say that he didn't blink in this game because first quarter of this one, 65.3 passing grade, 50% completion percentage, one big time throw, one turnover worthy play. The second half of this game, so beyond the second quarter, so just second half of this game, 85.3 passing grade, 81.1 adjusted completion percentage. I mean, he was just surgical in the second half of this game. He came alive and he threw the touchdowns, and obviously he was able to get the team a victory. So the fact that Nix is playing this well, and what I like the most about Nix isn't the fact that like he's not failing at all. It's when he's failing, he's like, all right, short-term memory. We're going on to the next one. And for rookie quarterbacks, that's really, really difficult. We're seeing Caleb struggle with that, like we certainly did in the first half of the season, where Caleb was struggling and then he just couldn't get out of his own head, right? And I think that that's something that we have had to monitor throughout the season, but doesn't seem like that's the case with Nix. Nix is ready. He trusts his head coach. He trusts himself. And so, to me, him playing as well as he did in the second half of this game is truly what told the story, because the Raiders were right there. The Raiders could have won this football game, but Nix did not want it to be so. On the most impressive side of things, Jacoby Myers, 15 targets, 10 catches, 121 receiving yards. That's his most targets since 2023. That's his most receptions since 2022. And it's the most receiving yards in a single game in his entire career. So shout out to Jacoby Myers. Fantastic career day for him as my most impressive there. Your most impressive and most disappointing. What do you got?
I try to find something different, so mostly so I don't have to listen to myself repeating myself all the time, but I have to do it 2 weeks in a row. Quinn Miners at right guard for the Broncos, a 94 overall grade again after a 94 overall grade last week. He's got 2 now of the 6th highest graded games by a guard this season, and it's each of his last 2 games. 93.7 run blocking grade, just mauling people inside. I told you Atlanta's linebackers were getting sick of him last week.
Yeah.
The Raiders linebackers were sick of him in this game. He was just teeing off on people again in their zone schemes and on the second level. 8 positive run blocking grades. I don't know if we can track just hot streaks and cold streaks for guards, but Quinn Miners is on an absolute burner right now, and like I said last week, one of the best guards in football, and most disappointing for me, watching both of these teams in the red zone was painful. The Broncos were 2 for 4. The Raiders were 1 for 5. The Broncos were trying to keep the Raiders in the game, and the Raiders apparently just didn't want to be in it. But I'll give the Broncos. Let me stretch this out to the 30. I got to cheat sometimes to fit the narrative, right?
Go ahead.
That's how these things work.
Go
right?
ahead.
You always talk about, that the numbers work to my narrative. That's why they work.
That's why they're great.
Inside the Raiders' 30-yard line.
Yeah.
The Broncos ran 16 plays and gained 12 yards. And 2 of those plays were actually the 2 touchdowns they scored. The other 14 plays, they lost 8 yards total. They drove the ball like crazy all day, and they just couldn't punch it in, which is weird because lately they've been one of the better red zone teams in the league. And then the Raiders, 1 for 5 in the red zone, 1 touchdown, 3 field goals, 16 plays for 45 yards down there. So they're not even getting 3 yards a play. Mm-hmm. And I still don't, it's just a minor thing for me to I'm just here to complain for 5 seconds. When you're down 10 and there's not much time to go, why do teams not just kick the field goal right when they have the chance to, because the goal is to score 10? So I'm talking here. The Raiders...
they would rather do the more difficult thing. Are you saying like...
So, like in this game,
you're saying the second they get in the field goal range, just kicking it?
Yes.
Like on first down?
Yes, because you need an onside kick and 2 scores anyway. Yes. I see this every single week, multiple times. The Raiders in this game.
Well, you would think because you're already closer to the end zone.
Don't care. Because the Raiders never even scored. They didn't score the touchdown. The time just ran out. They got down to... I'm just throwing this. I know it's a minor thing, and I know winning when you're down 10 in the last 2 minutes is an extremely low probability. But Bears did it, right? And I know they went touchdown first and got it. You never know when these things happen.
This is interesting.
Desmond Ridder got the Raiders down to the 20 with a minute left, roughly.
So you're just saying kick the field goal there.
Kick it right there. Yep. You have time. Instead, they kept going for the touchdown. And first of all, they didn't score it. And second of all, even if they did, there would have been like 8 seconds left.
So then it doesn't come down. So then it wouldn't come down to the nerves of a last kick either, right?
No, you'd be throwing a Hail Mary.
If
you even got the onside kick. Which obviously, look, I'm talking low likelihood stuff, but I don't understand. If it's me with like no timeouts in the last 2 minutes, The second I'm in range, I'm kicking it. At least give me a chance.
I don't hate it. I don't know if I agree with it.
It's a minor thing that comes up for me once or twice a week that I cannot stand. Why does it have to be touchdown first and then field goal? You need 10 points. Any which order you can get them in. Is it just no one thinks about this or what? The second they got to the 20 with a minute to go, I'm kicking a field goal. I just don't. I never understand. It's not just the Raiders. I see it from, at some point in the year, I see it from every single team down 10 late in the game.
I'll think about it.
It just kills me. Because that was also one of the red zone trips. That was the last red zone trip, and they didn't score any points, and they had no chance to win, as opposed to maybe the 5% chance they did have.
So they had no timeouts, right?
Maybe one, but I don't think they had
I'm thinking about this in my head. Like, if you had timeouts,
then you're managing the clock thing. If you had all 3 timeouts, yeah, go ahead, try to score.
No, but if you had all 3 timeouts on the other side of things, and I'm literally thinking about this.
And you could still kick it.
Then you would not have to onside it, right? So like
you wouldn't have to.
So like you could kick it immediately, and then you could.
3 timeouts is a different story. If you have less than 3, let's say you have 2 and there's a minute left, then it doesn't help you because it's going to run off anyway.
Right.
Pretty much with anything less than 3 timeouts, I think you just kick it. I just don't. You need 10. It doesn't matter what order they're in. I'll never. Sorry. That's
I don't
just
know.
that's
Look,
a
I don't
thing
hate
for me.
it. I don't hate it, but
it just kills me. I just don't understand.
I'm gonna sit in my hotel room tonight and just think about this.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a weird thing I always see. They're like, well, if we get the touchdown first, we got the hard one out of the way.
I don't hate you thinking about it.
It's all the hard one.
I don't hate you thinking about it.
Coming back from 10 points down in the last 2 minutes is the hard one.
I actually
that's the task.
I don't hate taking away like a final like buzzer beater kick from somebody. You know, like there's like no pressure.
That too.
So you're just kicking it. Like it's fine, like it's a field goal, whatever. Like you're still down a touchdown or whatever, like
because that's actually a low pressure kick, a 38-yarder down 10.
Right.
He's gonna hit that.
Right. You're gonna hit that.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I just don't. I'll never understand it.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Anyways, folks, a staple of a good outfit, it's a hat, right? But it's not just any hat. It's the right hat. See the hat right there? Melon? They're the best hats that you're going to find. They've got all different types of hats, and the second that you pick them up and put them on your head, they know, or you know, that they are different. I mean, these hats, they come in all different types of styles. They've got, thermal hats. We've got the winter coming up, help keep you warm. They've got stuff that's very like even more waterproof than the regular hats already are, so you can wear them out, and if it's raining or if you're sweating a lot or like whatever, they've got fantastic stuff for that. You can see on the screen right now if you're watching this show all different types of styles, with the brim, different colors, everything, man. We had a couple of these hats sent to us. These are my favorite hats I own. No joke. They're fantastic. The second that you put them on, you know that they're gonna last. That's the thing about these hats. Super durable. They are very versatile. You can wear them. You can wear them to work out. You can wear them when you're going out for some drinks with some friends, whatever it is. No matter what time of year it is as well, they've got you. So these are the best hats, and I think that money can buy. The comfort, the fit, the sizing for every different shape of head, which I got a weird shaped head, and so they fit in my head correctly, which I love, appreciate. Thanks for looking out for me. They're fantastic. If you're looking for the world's most durable hat, look no further. Go to melon.com, melin.com. That's melin.com, and put these hats to the test yourself. They're absolutely fantastic. Niners, Packers. Different football game than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be when the NFL schedule came out. Packers win this one 38-10. Packers fans, of course, rejoicing in this one. Top 5 graded Packers in this game. Linebacker Quay Walker, a 91.4. Guard Elfton Jenkins with an 86.6. Running back Josh Jacobson, a 86.3. Cornerback Javon Bowler, the rookie, an 84.9. And then cornerback Kayshawn Nixon with an 83.2. Jordan Love in this game, a 63.5 overall grade. And the other side of things for San Francisco, George Kittle continues to have a phenomenal season. 90.7 overall grade. Offensive tackle Jalen Moore with an 81.7. Cornerback Diamador Lenore, 69.6. Safety Malik Mustafa is 69.3. Safety Jair Brown right after him, rounding out the top 5 with a 63.8. No Brock Purdy in this game. It was Brandon Allen, 47.8 overall grade. Sadly told the story, Dalton.
It's not even really a stat, and you mentioned Brock Purdy, but I think we just need to go over all of the guys that are not on the field for the Niners in this game.
Fair.
Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Travarius Ward, Brandon Ayuk, Talanoa Hufanga, Javon Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw, and from what I can see, Christian McCaffrey's out there, but I don't think he looks 100%.
Yeah.
The Niners can't win without.
That's your football team.
That's your whole football team.
Without the voice crack. That's your football team.
Other than Debo and Kittle out there and Fred Warner, who, I mean, with no defensive. Some of the names they're putting out there on this defensive line, you're talking about like late picks and undrafted guys that are playing significant snaps for them. There was just, with all of those guys, and then throw Purdy on top of it this week, they can't win with the team that they put out there yesterday. It's just not going to happen. And I mean, the wild part is they have all these injuries, and maybe Hufanga comes back soon, and they're hopeful Purdy comes back next week. They're only a game out of first place in the West, but it's only getting harder. That literally is your football team, or at least 80% of what we think of the Niners as. It's just not. They're not the same team without all those guys. They never had a shot to win this game, especially when Purdy went down for the week.
Well, my computer's freaking out really bad, so I can't really see anything.
Penalties? You wanted to talk penalties?
Yeah, I think the penalties are obviously a big deal. Like, we got to talk about them. This is another team that was just, it was littered with penalties. Like, that was the story of the game for the 49ers outside of the injuries. You don't even have the identity of your football team out there with all those players gone. So, the guys who are then out there competing, they're making mistakes. So you're compounding all this stuff. You don't even have a quarterback. It was never a game that it felt like the 49ers were going to win. But now they're sitting here and they're 5-6. They lose every single tiebreaker against all of their divisional opponents. So at the very best, maybe you could go on a streak here and tie them up. But even then, you might lose some tiebreakers against them.
You have to be healthy. Right now, this version of the Niners isn't better than any of them either. This is the problem, is we're sitting here thinking about the 49ers because they're the 49ers, but you mentioned it. You talk about, okay, before the season we thought this was a primetime game. Well, it's not when one team has their team and the other one doesn't. Mm-hmm. And the Niners are rolling like this every week. We don't know who's playing next week or not. And look, the injury bug gets a couple teams every year, and the Niners right now are number one on the list. But
9 penalties, 77 yards in this game. Before this week, they had 55 total accepted penalties against them. That was 27th most in the league. So top 6, I think, in the league, in least amount of penalties called against them. So now you're putting all your backups in. Now they're committing all sorts of penalties. It's just a snowball. It's an avalanche, whatever analogy you want to use. It's not going in the right direction for the San Francisco 49ers. Most impressive in this game, I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs. 26 carries, 106 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, but 11 forced missed tackles from Josh Jacobs. That's what you love to see. That's the individual performance beyond just the offensive line of somebody who is worth the money, who could be a big difference maker. And even when the offensive line does not block perfectly on a single play, you got somebody who can make guys miss in the open field, and that's Josh Jacobs. So they are giving him a giant workload this season, but he is up to the task.
How about all the free agent running backs, huh? Henry, Barkley,
not bad.
Jacobs.
Wow. Yeah, those 3.
Even
changing teams
when the Bears have used Swift properly, he's been pretty good. That's when they've won ball games, is running the ball.
Sure.
I mean, I know he wasn't a free agent. The Texans getting Joe Mixon for nothing aside from yesterday. I mean, maybe are they busting up the narrative that you shouldn't sign running backs or what? Feels like it.
I think this is a pretty unique running back class,
talented
though.
Guys.
Just really talented guys at the free agent market. Most impressive and disappointing for you.
The Packers. You know what the Packers had? They had a quakening. Sorry, I had to do it. Quay Walker, monster game, 91.4 overall grade. I knew I'd get you with that. Second best overall grade of his career, best run defense grade of his career. They just took for granted that the Niners weren't going to throw the ball a whole lot, so he went and teed off up front. He was flying to the football, I think, better than I've ever seen him. 3 stops in run defense, only allowed 1 catch for 5 yards, a forced incompletion. Almost perfected it with an interception, but dropped the ball. But great game from Quay Walker. And then even through this, the Packers still trying to find some cornerback depth. Keyshawn Nixon was really good. Actually moved to the outside. He used to be in the slot. Now they're kind of going with Javon Bullard more in the slot, Nixon outside, but Jair Alexander out in this game. Carrington Valentine got a chance to shine. Didn't quite happen. 31 coverage grade, 4 targets, 3 catches, 68 yards, and that 1 incompletion was a drop that would have went for a first down. So They certainly need Jair Alexander in the lineup if they're going to beat the elite teams in the NFC.
Most disappointing for me is just the San Francisco 49ers. 19% chance to make the playoffs before this week. That number is going to go down, obviously, with a loss here. I mentioned they lose the tiebreaker to every team that they have in their division. Does not look like the Niners are going to make the playoffs this year. And that sucks. Really talented roster, but when guys aren't out there, no, it's not. And this is not the team that they thought that they were going to be on paper going into the season.
They have to go to Buffalo this week. Is that right?
I don't remember who they have next.
I believe that's it. They have to go to Buffalo now.
Not great.
Not great.
Admittedly, not great. Cardinals Seahawks is the next game we're talking about. The Seahawks win this game 16-6. Interesting score. Seattle, top 5 graded players we have here. Number 1 on the list, it's running back Kenneth Walker with an 88.2. Defensive tackle Leonard Williams with an 87.0. Wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba 79.1. And linebacker Ernest Jones with a 73.5. Oh, one more, Julian Love here at number 5, 71.1. Quarterback Geno Smith, a 70.3 PFF grade. In this one on Arizona's side of things, cornerback Garrett Williams getting an interception in this game. I think it's the second interception that he had in the Seattle Seahawks Stadium, so obviously feeling like home there. 90.8. Edge rusher David Collins, an 89.3. Tight end Trey McBride, a guy you called last week, one of the most uncoverable players, one of the toughest matchups every single week in the NFL, an 86.2. Went off again this week. Cornerback Max Melton with a 70.5, and guard Evan Brown, a 68.4. In this game, Kyler Murray, a 61.8 PFF grade. Your stat that told the story, Dalton.
All right, so in a game they play in the pouring rain all day, the key is to stop the run, especially against the Cardinals team who can really run the football with multiple different guys. But the Seahawks, maybe they're turning a corner on this. We talked about their run defense last week against San Francisco. Solid, not great, but good enough, right? Last year, the Seahawks run defense, right at this point in the season, was the reason they started falling apart. They couldn't stop anybody. Now they're starting to get it going. You got Ernest Jones at linebacker. You've got rookie linebacker Therese Knight from UTEP. I think a day 3 pick he was. Mm-hmm. He stepped into the starting lineup. They cut Terrell Dodson. That was kind of a big deal because it was a reasonable free agent acquisition.
Yeah, kind of strange.
A lot of stuff going on at linebacker. Leonard Williams was really good inside. Byron Murphy's kind of stable in there. But the whole idea is that maybe they can actually stop the run now. And if they can do that, they can make a run at a division title. 68.9 run defense grade as a team. They're best since week 1 against Denver. They only missed 3 tackles. They're tackling better, even just the fundamentals. Last 4 games in run defense, they've only missed 8 tackles. First 7 games, they missed 36. So even just the tackling and the most fundamental thing has been better. 49 rushing yards allowed. And you remember I told you before, the first 2 games of the year that an offense didn't pick up a first down rushing were both the Texans. This is the third one. The Cardinals did not pick up a first down all day on the ground. That'll get it done right there. In the pouring rain, if you make a team one-dimensional, especially towards throwing the ball, you got an advantage. And Seattle's run defense is picking it up right now at the right time.
Yeah, it seems like the Cardinals are they're like the Texans to me. They're just frustrating. They're a frustrating team. One week when everything's going well, we go, look at the Cardinals. Who wants to play the Cardinals? And I agree. When it looks great for the Cardinals, it obviously looks great. But like this week, money down specifically, 3 for 12 on third down, 0 for 1 on fourth down, 0 for 2 in the red zone. Like it looks like they're either unstoppable or they're completely stoppable. It's one of those two things. They're very high variance right now, and it's just the floor has to be higher for this team. So to me, that was the stat that told the story. Is I felt like the floor was going to be higher for this group. They weren't able to run the football very well, and we've said before, like we said with the Washington Commanders. Sure, everybody talks about the quarterback. They talk about the explosiveness that they could have in the pass game. If they're not running the football, they're probably not going to win the game. That's just their identity, and they did not run the football well in this game either. This was the second, just getting my most disappointing, this was the second lowest EPA per rush that they have had in a single game so far this season. 50.7 team rush grade this week against Seattle, the lowest team rushing grade that they have had in a single season or in a single game this season. So it's very clear. They have to run the football first and foremost. And then what they get out of the passing game truly just takes their offense to another level. If you don't run the football, I don't think that the passing game has the consistency to be able to carry you, even with a guy like Kyler Murray. And if you want to say like, well, he can be an MVP, of course, like he has the ability to totally carry this team, but it's just not a recipe for success. You cannot bet on that every single week. So to me, that was sort of what was most disappointing there. I thought Geno Smith played a really great game. I thought he was able to continue to take deep shots down the field. He's one of the biggest like big game hunting quarterbacks that we have in this league, and they're playing really, really well. But I wanted to make sure that I shouted him out. He wasn't like one of my categorical players, but I felt like Geno Smith, he's having the kind of year the Seahawks need him to have, and that is fearlessness, in my opinion. They couldn't have this quarterback that just, all right, well, I'm gonna play a conservative game. You're like, that's just not how this team is built. They're built to capitalize off a quarterback who's willing to put the ball deeper down the field, and Geno Smith's the guy to do it. And I think this was a really great game from him.
No, I agree. I think actually it just needs to be said more often. He is one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
Yes, absolutely.
I think for a lot of stretches this year, he's played like a top 10 to 12 quarterback. I think he's just really good.
I agree.
Opposed to, look, we're in the third year of it with Geno Smith. We need to stop calling him some surprise or some comeback story and just call him what he is. He's good.
He's just good.
He's really good.
Yep.
You know who else is really good is this running back. And you know why I like this game? A game like this from Kenneth Walker is exactly why PFF grades exist. Because people are going to go, wait, okay, he had 20 touches for 93 total yards. What's the big deal? The big deal is that he had to earn every single bit of that and some. Trevor, between rushing and receiving, he forced 16 missed tackles.
That's nuts.
By himself.
Nuts.
16.
Nuts.
All right? Running the ball, he had 41 rushing yards. 46 were after contact. He was gaining more than the offensive line was even allowing him to get back to the line of scrimmage. And even as a receiver, 52 receiving yards, 59 of them after the catch. He's starting in the hole.
Yep.
Both running and receiving.
Yep.
Breaking 16 tackles in a game is ridiculous. We need to find in the NFL what the single game high is either for the year or maybe ever, what that record is. I've seen that sometimes in college because, college kids tackling. But in the NFL, that doesn't usually happen. Kenneth Walker just occasionally in this game, the ability to just pick up tough first downs and tough yardage, again, in a bad weather game, in a tight defensive game, that can be the difference. Like these are the games where a 4-yard gain even is magnified, especially when you're not supposed to get it, and you have a unit that's got a 45 run blocking grade in front of you and giving you nothing. Those can be huge plays in a tight game where you think about, and in this game it was the case, I'll go most disappointing, where the one big mistake was the difference in the game. And the most disappointing for me is Kyler Murray under pressure. Clean pocket, in rhythm, all that stuff when things were moving, he was fine. Under pressure, 2 for 11, 29 yards, 27.6 passing grade, took 5 sacks, and that pick 6 that he threw in what was still obviously a one-score game. I don't remember if it was tied or one score, or if it was 9-6. I forget what the score was at the time. But either way, that's the biggest play of the game. You just can't. That's a throw you can't make. That's like an inexcusable, almost rookie mistake, to be rolling to your right and back and just overshoot a ball that was never going to be complete, as opposed to just throwing it out of bounds.
Well, my most impressive goes to that exact play, but it's the guy who, in my opinion, made the play, not the guy who made the interception, is Devon Witherspoon. Because on that play, it's 4th and 1. It's a major part of the game. We're midway through the third quarter. It's an RPO look. Well, it's it was more of like a play action rollout kind of a thing where I was like, okay, like I don't think it was an RPO, but it was more of a play action. Devon Witherspoon crashes down, and then the second he realizes that Kyler Murray's going to keep it and it's going to be this kind of roll to his right and probably pop pass over to Michael Wilson, he puts his foot in the ground and he immediately changes direction. And that's something that you watch with Devon Witherspoon of why he was a top 5 corner for me in his draft class, because his stop and start body control ability was nuts. And it was on full display in this play because he immediately put his foot in the ground after crashing down on the running back, got even with Kyler Murray to where Kyler was not able to scramble the 1 yard for the first down. He pressures Murray. Murray's just got to throw it up. He does. It's intercepted. And then Witherspoon becomes a lead blocker down the field, blocking James Conner, paving the way for Bryant to get into the end zone. It was an unbelievable play in which Witherspoon gets 0 stats for. The only stat that he gets, he played a snap. He was in on that play. Nothing else happened. He didn't get a pass breakup. He didn't get a tackle. I suppose he would have got maybe a pressure on that play at the very end. Maybe that was registered as a pressure. But
if he was,
I think he might. Yeah, so it might have registered as a pressure for him. But then, to talk about what he was as a lead blocker on that play and paving the way, it's just an unbelievable performance for an unbelievable player. So to me, just even one play alone, because of the magnitude of it, I went with most impressive Devon.
He's one of the best players in football. That's just straight up. He can play inside, outside, wherever. He was worth every bit of the 5th overall pick, and he's a guy. He's the best player on defense, and they've got several good ones, but it's him. He's the heart and soul of it. And again, I'm still in the boat. A fantastic play, because the initial coverage is what causes the panic for Kyler Murray and all of that. But and that's where for Murray, for me, I go, look, I saw several quarterbacks this week, even young guys, get better with risk mitigation. Obviously, Bo Nix is great at it. Jaden Daniels is great at it. But that's just a throw. Look, I get that it's 4th down, but it's not the very end of the game. It's still in the middle of the 3rd quarter. Either if you throwing it away sucks on 4th down, or trying to take off and run when you may or may not get it, cool. But that's the one thing you can't do if you're Kyler in that situation. And it was a great play by Witherspoon. But in a game this tight, in the rain, defensive game, that's the one big mistake. That really, you could argue that one play is the story of this game.
We got one more game. We're going to talk about Thursday Night Football. Before we get to that, though, to the parents out there, as parents, you do everything that you can to set your kids up for a successful future. Academics, team sports, college admissions, all that good stuff. But what about getting them started financially before they're out on their own, right? Fabric makes it easy to be able to do that by setting up an investment account for your child now that'll grow with them and helps prepare them for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Lice, it was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While kids cannot invest while they're minors, a UGMA kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments even more time to grow. The funds can be used for anything to benefit your child: tuition, books, summer camp, after-school activities, and then when they're adults, setting up a business, buying their first house, buying a new car, whatever it is. It's all online. It's easy to set up, and an account could take you just 5 minutes to set it up. Get started investing with as little as $1 a day, and then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family and start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. This is a paid promotion for the Fabric UGMA product and not an investment advisory services. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Custodial services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investment is subject to risk. Terms apply. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Last game, let's go back to Thursday Night Football, the Blizzard game in the AFC North. Cleveland comes away with the win, 24-19. It was a very fun game to watch. And, those are the games where I was talking with somebody about this. This is a camaraderie game, right? I mean, first half of that game, kind of lame, not going to lie. Classic Thursday Night Football game. Nobody really could move the ball, not a lot going on. The second it started downpouring in the snow, stuff was different. Every pass, 5 yards, 15 yards, 40 yards, whatever, every pass was celebrated like it was a first down in the Super Bowl. I mean, you watch some of those Jerry Jeudy catches for the Cleveland Browns. He's catching the football. I mean, the sideline's going nuts. Jameis is going nuts. The O-line's going nuts. These little runs for like 3-4 yards. I mean, it was the same thing on the other side of things with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every tackle, every pass breakup, whatever it was. That is one of the games that if you grew up playing sports at all whatsoever, whenever the weather gets involved, there's just like some sort of focus.
Well, if you're gonna go through the shit, you might as well win the game. And at least one team, because if you lose a game like that,
it sucks.
It sucks extra, because then you got snowed on and you're freezing your ass off and all that stuff, and you go, and we lost.
Growing up in Florida, I grew up playing soccer, and especially in high school, we had a pretty good high school soccer team. And so, like, when we were in a divisional game or whatever, it was Florida, so obviously we're playing in the afternoon after high school. We'd get rain, like we'd get quite a few rain games, and like when we would play in rain games, I mean, just you're soaked, it's raining, it's tough to pass the ball, it's tough to control the ball, whatever, but like it's this extra sense of I'm going through it, but we're gonna power through against the elements and win this football game. The Cleveland Browns obviously do that, and it was fun to watch. Cleveland's top 5 graded players in this game. Edge rusher Myles Garrett at the top of the list with a 90.4. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy an 86.4. Linebacker Jordan Hicks an 85.9. Guard Wyatt Teller with an 84.8. And then linebacker Mohamed Diabate with an 83.6. Quarterback Jameis Winston an 86.4. On Pittsburgh's side of things, edge rusher Nick Herbig an elite 93.1 overall grade. Linebacker Peyton Wilson with a 79.9. Tight end Pat Freiermuth with a 79.0. Wide receiver Calvin Austin a 76.2. And then edge rusher TJ Watt a 76.0. Quarterback Russell Wilson in this one a 79.9. Stat that told the story in the snow.
The Browns just won the moments they absolutely needed to, and that means they went 4 for 4 on 4th down.
Yep.
All those 4th down conversions were on their 3 touchdown drives. There was a Nick Chubb run early that led to the first touchdown drive. There was another one that led to their second touchdown drive, and then the very last drive, actually I should say the second touchdown was 2 conversions. It was a Chubb run, and then it was Jameis's now famous NFL Films touchdown run where he goes barreling in, maybe trying to attempt the Saquon Barkley hurdle or whatever. You never know with Jameis. It's always
you really don't.
You know, it's a roller coaster.
Right. I know, but I don't because nobody really does.
You've seen how that goes. And then the big 4th down on the last drive to Jerry Jeudy on the pick play and man-to-man coverage. That was really their last stand. They didn't get a 3rd down conversion until after that, till the last 2 minutes of the game. They were 1 for 10 on 3rd down, but 4 for 4 on 4th downs. Did just enough on offense when they needed to. Most impressive for me also, I'm just going to go there. It's Jameis. I mean, getting through the snow, like you mentioned, it just seemed like an extra bit of adrenaline, and he made great throws all night, especially to Jerry Jeudy, who's been his favorite target lately, but 86.4 overall, 2 big-time throws, both of them under pressure, the rushing touchdown, the 2-point conversion to Njoku. I mean, it was a game of moments, and Jameis made it happen in almost every moment except for the interception he threw in the 4th quarter. But then the Browns defense, okay, bailed him out. Cool, we'll bail you out of a mistake. Go out, make another moment happen on this last drive, and the Browns, they come away with it. And it was a fun game. It did turn into a fun one, and it was just the Browns, again, in all the biggest moments of it, found a way in what's been obviously a tough season.
I agree with you completely. The stat that told the story is the big moments of the second half. It's the 4th down conversions. It's the big catches by Jerry Jeudy. Like that. That's what told the story of this game is when the second half got underway. And my most impressive is both pass rushes. Dude, in the second half of this game, Steelers, as a team, 91.5 pass rush grade, 77% pass rush win percentage, and 14 pressures. On the other side of things, the Browns, in just the second half, 70.1 pass rush grade, 47% pass rush win percentage, 17 pressures from the Browns defensive line.
There was a couple
These
of those
defensive lines were getting after in the second half.
There was a couple of those hits Russell Wilson took that I was like, is he getting up from that? Because, I mean, he just took kill shots repeatedly, and the touchdown throw over the middle when he took that hit.
Which was gorgeous.
There was 2 or 3 times.
I was so surprised at the throws that were made in that second half. What a game.
There were 2 or 3 times I thought Russ wasn't getting up. I mean, he took kill shots and illegal kill shots at that, but I mean, just absolute kill shots. And you mentioned these, when they're on, they're 2 of the best pass rushers in football, and they were on it in this game.
Most disappointing, Browns pass blocking, second half specifically, 19.8 team pass blocking grade in the second half. I mean, that's not great. We just praised the defensive lines, and so it's a little bit of a give and take there. But it was hard to find like a most disappointing in this game because it was so much fun. There was so much with the snow involved and battling the elements. The quarterbacks were making big time throws. The wide receivers were making the big catches. The running backs, okay, it wasn't like super explosive, but it was one of those games where in the snow, like it's tough to run the football the way that you want to. But it's just this game was so much fun. You're most disappointing though. Before we get out of here,
I don't know that we have a more Jekyll and Hyde player than Joey Porter Jr. He's got.
This season.
Yes, this season. Yeah. 6 games with a coverage grade above 70. This was not one of them. Mm-hmm. And 5 with a coverage grade below 50. That's all his games. There's no in-between in this game.
It's the theme of the episode. We just told you, like penalties that we talked about for certain teams, but then also cornerback play.
Yeah.
It's just up and down. You got
it very up and down for him, and for him it's a week-to-week basis. 5 catches and 52 yards allowed. Both of those big conversions on the last drive, the winning drive, went in his direction, also committed a penalty. It's just, this is what it is. Joey Porter Jr., one week he looks like one of the best corners in football, and then the next week he struggles, and it's just, it's a very, looking at his coverage grade is actually hilarious, because it's like, Green, red, green, red, green, red. It looks just Christmas tree-ish. It's like just back and forth, honestly.
Tis the season. Big Christmas guy.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Look, they say you can't decorate with Christmas decorations before Christmas. Joey Porter Jr.'s season grades tell a different story.
He's been doing it since September.
Oh, that's early.
He started earlier than
That's
anyways.
early. That's
yeah,
early.
See that?
It's all right. It's Thanksgiving week, so now I have to ask you because I won't see it till next week. When's the appropriate time to put up Christmas decorations? Are you an after Thanksgiving guy?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know the appropriate time to put up any decorations. I don't.
Do you have any sort of Christmas decorations at all whatsoever?
That I own?
Yes.
No.
All right, we're changing that. We're changing that, folks.
It's
we're changing that collectively together.
I have a hat, if that helps.
Like a Santa hat?
Yeah. That's something.
You need to get a tree or something.
I just moved here, Trevor. That's probably true.
I'll get you a tree.
You're getting me a tree?
I'll get you a tree.
All right.
I'll get you a little tree. We got to make sure that you're ready.
I wasn't sure you'd get me a tree
because after
being late for the gambling party over there on Sunday.
Now the tree's just going to be smaller.
Oh, I'm getting a Charlie Brown tree.
Yeah,
it's actually better. I don't want a full tree in my apartment. That sounds like a big thing.
Appreciate everybody. I wouldn't get you a full tree. Just like one that you could put on your table and be like, oh, okay, at least you have something in here. It can't be a total.
Now I got to get a table.
Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the show. We appreciate it. Everybody in the chat who's watching us live, appreciate you hanging out with us live. We will be back same time next week for Week 13 in the NFL. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. We will see you guys next Monday. See you then.